There are some sporting events each year that are genuinely iconic, and there's no question that in Formula One that event is Monaco. Described by five-times winner, the late Graham Hill, as Ascot, the Derby, the Gold Cup and the Grand National of motor racing all rolled into one, it has an atmosphere and a setting that is utterly unique. This is round 6 of a World Championship that has seesawed between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, and they arrive separated by only 6 points. But the qualifying session on this 2-mile ribbon of tarmac bordering the Mediterranean saw a decisive swing in favour of Vettel as he starts on the front row and Hamilton finds himself in 13th. And this is by far the most difficult track on the calendar on which to overtake. The straights are short, the track is narrow, and the cars are big. The returning Jenson Button commented on just how wide they look when following each other in practice over the weekend. So Hamilton has a mountain to climb, whereas Ferrari are perfectly poised to claim the most prestigious race on the calendar, with Raikkonen on pole position and Vettel in second place. And we have absolutely glorious conditions for the race this year. Last year we had rain before the start of the race, a wet beginning to the race, drying up as we went through. That certainly threw the strategy up in the air a little bit. This time it is a bone dry track. We've got similar track temperatures to those we saw yesterday at just over 50 degrees. It's a sparkling day here on the Côte d'Azur, here in Monaco, with a billionaire's playground where the floating palaces provide unrivaled luxury as they try to get a view. And there's the back of the commentary box as well, so we get a little bit of a view down onto the circuit, to the pit area as well, and some fantastic vantage points all around this circuit as apartments seem to climb over each other to get the best view of the race. So here's the grid then. It is Kimi Raikkonen. He is on pole position, first time for a long time for him. Can he lead the race? Sebastian Vettel alongside, Valtteri Bottas an excellent third, and Max Verstappen starting in 4th place. Daniel Ricciardo in the second Red Bull is 5th on the grid. Carlos Sainz a superb 6th in the Toro Rosso. Then it's Sergio Perez for Force India and Romain Grosjean in the Haas. Danny Kvyat and Nico Hülkenberg complete the top 10. They have been promoted because of penalties for the McLarens, however. Magnussen starts in 11th place in his Haas. Stoffel van Dorn with his 3-grid place penalty goes down to 12th place. Still a good effort, that. Lewis Hamilton starts all the way down there in 13th place, with Felipe Massa alongside in 14th. 15th on the grid is the Frenchman who also had a crash during practice, Esteban Ocon. Jolyon Palmer's 16th on the grid in his Renault. Then it's Lance Stroll, the 18-year-old in the Williams. He's 17th on the grid. Pascal Wehrlein is 18th. And then as we get to the back, we see Marcus Ericsson, who got a grid penalty, didn't actually change anything. They had a gearbox change. And Jenson Button is actually going to be starting from the pit lane. So he will be starting after everybody has gone through the first corner at Saint-Devote. Sometimes that's a good thing. You can avoid the chaos that everybody is getting into through that first corner. But everybody in position now, and what an opportunity this is going to be for Kimi Raikkonen here today. His last victory came in Australia back in 2013, and this could be an opportunity for him to take his first win since coming back to Ferrari, because that win in Australia was with the Lotus team. So we have to go back to 2009 since the last time that Kimi Raikkonen was a winner in a Ferrari. The most tortuous yet most glamorous race of the year is about to come up here in perfect conditions. Take your seat. We're getting ready for what should be a tremendous event. The last time that Ferrari won here in Monaco, the driver who is fourth on this grid, Max Verstappen, was 3 years old. The grid moves away on the formation lap, led by Kimi Raikkonen. For the first time in 9 years, he's leading a grid away. It was Monaco back in 2008 when he last did this, and it's great to see that he is up front. But what will happen at the start of this race? That's one of the most crucial stages, of course, the start. Coming into the race, it's a 6-point gap for Vettel over Hamilton in the championship. Bottas in third, Raikkonen's in fourth place. Of course, both Bottas and Raikkonen failed to finish last time out. Same with Verstappen in Spain. There was contact between the three of them at the first corner. And although Bottas got through that, unable to continue and actually led the race for some of it, he ended up going out with a power unit failure. So for those three drivers, Spain was not great. They weren't able to add to their scores. Lewis Hamilton, of course, had a brilliant drive in Spain at the last race, David, but he's going to have to deliver a miraculous drive here today to score really good points.
Yeah, it's such a different racetrack that I've got to imagine that inside Lewis's Hamilton's head, it's about damage limitation, overtaking, incredibly difficult, even when you have a car working well. Clearly, they've had issues in getting the tyres into their optimal moment. So what's different now? More than 100 kilos of fuel on board. Low degradation racetrack, one of the best drivers in the world behind the wheel. So once he settles into this race, then he might be able to pick off some places, but otherwise it's going to be a case of being patient and, well, trying to find that gap in the traffic. Does he go super long and try and see if he can get some clean air later in the Grand Prix? To see Jenson Button, sadly, and his one race return, making his way to the end of the pit lane for his race start.
Karan, let's just listen first to Jenson.
Jenson, my friend, I'm sure you wanted to hear my voice before starting the race. Just wishing you the best of luck. We follow you here on television. You did amazing yesterday. So, yeah, please have fun,
thank you,
my friend, and take care of my car.
Okay, I'm going to pee in your seat.
No, please. Have fun. You did amazing.
Cheers,
yesterday.
man.
Amazing job.
And you, buddy. And you, buddy. Have a good one.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. Thank you. Good luck.
That's really nice.
Cheers, buddy. And you. Stay safe.
Fernando Alonso speaking to Jenson Button on the as we prepare for the start.
Well, further going to show that you can only really have love between teammates when you're not actually competing on the same day.
Corinne, a quick word from you as the cars begin to line up.
Yeah, it's sounding more like Pedro de la Rosa. I mean, it's all about the start here, and you need to stay out of trouble. DC knows this from incidents in the past. You've got to stay out of trouble.
Well, here we go then. We are seeing all the cars lined up in position. Kimi Raikkonen on the left as you look at it, and on the right it's Sebastian Vettel. The Monaco Grand Prix about to get underway. Lights out, away we go. It's a good start by Kimi Raikkonen. He's made a good start. Now, what about Bottas? He's trying to take second, but Vettel's there. And watch for Verstappen and Ricciardo. They're side by side. A slight touch, a little kiss between the two Red Bull teammates, but I think they got away with it. So as they climb the hill, no real change in order amongst the top few cars there. Verstappen is in fourth, Ricciardo's in fifth, Carlos Sainz is in sixth position. He's chased by Sergio Perez in the Force India, and now everybody just trying to get into the rhythm. Jenson Button has started from the pit lane, and just two of the cars in this race are on the super soft tyre as opposed to the ultra soft tyre. Hamilton already gained one place there. Hamilton up into 12th position, so that's one place gained already.
Well, that's a fantastic clean start from everyone. Normally we see some sort of concertina effect incident as far down as Lowe's, but by this point now they've got a feel for the car, brakes it up to temperature, and see if anyone tries to get brave on the brakes down into the chicane. Look out for Hamilton.
That was great.
The Williams slightly missing the apex of the curve of the chicane, but no advantage gained, so that will be allowed to pass this time.
Now the Ferraris are going pretty hard straight away. What we saw in qualifying yesterday was Ferrari were able to go fast immediately on these tyres, whereas Mercedes were taking at least one, if not two, build-up laps to get their tyres properly to temperature before they really went for it. And it looks to me as though Ferrari are trying to take advantage of that right now.
Yeah, well, they know there's very low degradation. This track just keeps getting better and better. We've had various other support races out on the circuit, keeping it clean, putting rubber into the tarmac. So a real opportunity for Ferrari to not only secure their place at the front right now, but to sort of hammer home an opportunity to try and get a gap in the traffic should there be an incident. And we're seeing people have headed to the pits already.
Yeah.
We've got Verline and Button, who obviously started in the the pit lane, so both of them will be committing to not stop again, assuming there's no traffic. So the advantage will be if there's a safety car and others then have to come in, they'll gain massively.
Yeah, so Corinne, you saw that Jenson Button, interestingly, coming in straight after his start from the pit lane.
Yeah, that's right. He's trying to get some free air. It was a perfectly normal stop right in front of me, actually, McLaren. So no drama, no problem. That was obviously scheduled. And he's trying to get free air to hammer in some quick laps in free air and gain time that way. That strategy won't work for someone like Lewis Hamilton, who's trying very much to get further up the pack. There was a lot of speculation of whether Lewis will try an early stop. I don't think they're going to do it as early as this.
So Pascal Wehrlein was the other one who did that on the first lap, and he was down at the back anyway. He started on the back row, so it's only two guys who were right at the back anyway who've gone for that strategy. As Kimi Räikkönen leads from Vettel, and the gap back to Bottas, 3.3 seconds from first to third, and he's being kept under pressure by Max Verstappen and then Daniel Ricciardo close behind. And a quick reminder, neither Bottas nor Max Verstappen have ever scored points here in Monaco in the past. Verstappen's crashed out on both of his Monaco races, and Bottas has never had a car capable of finishing top 10. The Williams he's been in the past has not been competitive here. Just talking about Williams, Felipe Massa is in 14th place. He's the first of the two Williams. Just seeing going down the hill, in fact, into the hairpin there. Lance Stroll in the second Williams is running down in 17th, and the field being completed by Ericsson, Wehrlein and Button, of course, who have a bit of free air now, having switched their tyres on that opening lap. So very early stages of the Monaco Grand Prix, and the first hurdle has been cleared, getting through that first corner with the car in one piece. There is Lewis Hamilton. He is currently in 12th place. He's chasing after Danny Kvyat. Now, that's not going to be easy, David, because Kvyat has actually been pretty fast all weekend, was a little bit unfortunate in qualifying.
Yeah, he's had good speed, and that's going to be very difficult to say for Lewis Hamilton. Just where are the overtaking opportunities here? On the brakes down into Saint-Devote, the first corner, on the brakes into the chicane. It's going to take a mistake from Daniel Kvyat for Lewis Hamilton to be able to open up an opportunity. We know as well the Mercedes car has been susceptible to overheating in certain Grand Prix, and here we get the view of Jenson Button sitting in the pit lane. He has to wait patiently for all the cars to pass through. Gets a little bit tight in the mid-grid. But under normal conditions, that would have seen Bottas, I think, outdrag Vettel into turn one. But of course, in such a short run, look, he gets his nose alongside, but then thinks the better of it as the barrier comes in to meet you. And then in the middle of the pack, there you go, as he just backs out of it. See how the Armco barrier actually comes across slightly and meets you. So you need to know this racetrack intimately. Small lock-up from Bottas, but that won't have done any damage.
Let's see how Hamilton gained a place.
Yeah, just absolutely out-launches. And again, has to be a little bit careful on the brakes. Comes around the outside. Yeah, he's still around the outside, but Lewis leaves some room and then is able to secure the advantage as they ride up the hill.
Magnussen was the other one who gained. He gained 2 places, in fact, on that start. So Magnussen is now up into 9th place. Got the 2 Haas cars running pretty close together. Look at Räikkönen, go for it. He's going very quickly, set to fastest lap at a 1:17.0. They were well beneath the lap record in qualifying, but the lap record for the race is a 1:14.4. Unlikely, but you never know. They're on full tanks of fuel at the moment. So the existing lap record set by Michael Schumacher back in 2004. As we see Daniel Ricciardo just coming through the shot, chasing after his teammate Max Verstappen. They were a little bit, well, certainly Ricciardo was a little disappointed with his qualifying, didn't feel like they'd got it quite right. This was when Wehrlein was in earlier. Oh my goodness, there was almost contact with Jenson Button there.
Well, that would...
Is that not unsafe? Is that not unsafe? Because I had to lift in the pit lane. An unsafe release.
Well, I was just about to say, that could be deemed to be an unsafe release. They're not lined up, the line is down in the pit lane. McLaren would have been released into the fast lane of that, so let's wait and see if there's any action there. Meanwhile, everyone's sort of settling down now into the early phase of burning your way through the fuel. You don't want to be running too much up the gearbox of the car in front unless you have a sizable pace advantage, but of course they've qualified in grid order, they've gone off in grid order.
It's hard to get close to these guys.
Yeah, copy that, Lewis. Now race comes later.
Yeah, so it's about being patient. Hard to get close to these guys, is what Lewis is saying. But his race engineer, Peter Boynton, saying, yeah, just wait, effectively. We've got to have patience. Our race comes later. So Vettel now with fastest lap on that last lap. Gap between the two Ferraris is 1.6 seconds, but they're still pulling away a little bit from Bottas, who was 6/10 of a second slower on that last lap and is certainly being kept close company by the two Red Bulls. There's Sainz in the Toro Rosso, Perez in the pink Force India. Perez had a great podium finish here last year, and in fact it could have gone the way of Sainz, but slightly slower pit stop for Carlos Sainz ended up costing him a fair bit of opportunity, and sadly he missed out, but it was a good day for Perez, who got Force India's best ever result here last year. In fact, the only podium that team has had under any name over the years here in Monaco, so it really was a tremendous performance from Perez. At the moment, he's down in 7th place, and again, just playing the waiting game, see what happens up ahead of him. So let's just quickly run through that top 10. Raikkonen leading, Vettel second, Bottas in the Mercedes is third, Verstappen, there he is, the Dutchman is in fourth, Ricciardo is fifth, Carlos Sainz sixth, Perez seventh, Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen in the two Haas cars are 8th and 9th. Good performance from them, and in 10th place is the Renault of Nico Hülkenberg. Looking at some slow motion action and just giving a bit more space than he was in practice. Kimi Raikkonen, he's touched that barrier a couple of times in practice, but this time he's allowing a little bit more space. Remember, these tyres are wider, the cars are wider than they have been for some time. They're actually 2 meters wide, current Formula One car. That's about the same width as a Land Rover Discovery, for example. So it's a wide vehicle you're talking about, and you're talking very narrow streets to drive it round. Yeah,
and your base of your buttocks is a few millimeters above the ground. So I often say to people when they come to Monaco and stand there imagining driving the streets, I say, well, get down on your hunkers and look down along and below the barrier. That's the view the driver has. His feet are slightly raised up, not quite as high as we had in the past, but they'll certainly be around to sort of chest height within the cockpit. And a very comfortable position to drive a racing car in what is a hostile environment, it has to be said. Temperatures more than 50 degrees, only around your eyes exposed to fresh air, if you can call it that, with the exhaust fumes of the car in front blowing across, mixed in with the Mediterranean air and the vapors of the after parties and the current parties that are going on here in Monaco. So it is a tremendous celebration, a tremendous sporting event, and right now these guys will be settled into the groove. They'll be listening to the engine noise, they'll be listening to the car skiffing the ground, feeling the feedback from the front tyres on turning, the rear tyres on acceleration, and every little bit of that feedback they bank away. And then, if required, if they can really just push a bit harder on the brakes, apply the throttle a bit earlier, they'll have that all stashed away in their data bank of knowledge of where the car's at. This is always one of the contrasts, Ben. When you disappear into the tunnel, you obviously get the radiated noise within the cockpit. When you first drive here, at first it makes you think someone's trying to overtake you, because it's as if there's another car joining you. Once you get used to that, of course, you just focus on not hitting the barrier at 170 miles an hour. So this place is a real assault on the senses in every way, because you're talking sense of hearing, sense of smell even. It's different here than it is at any other circuit. Than anywhere else. Lowest average speed of any Grand Prix. So coming through Rascasse, for instance, you can almost feel the heat coming off the tarmac, as well as the ambient air within the cockpit itself. You can see the marshals. If the marshal's looking not at you, if he's looking down the racetrack, then what's happened? What's around the corner? You know, you can recognize, you know, your friendly photographers as they make their way around the racetrack. Such as your senses are so heightened, you can recognize individuals in the crowd. So it's a wonderful, wonderful journey for a racing driver to be in such an environment. Well, very early stages of this year's Monaco Grand Prix, but so far so good for Kimi Raikkonen, having established the fastest time in practice, starting in pole position. He's now just holding on to a 2.3 second lead over his teammate Sebastian Vettel. Vettel it is, of course, who's fighting harder at the moment in the World Championship, because Vettel leads the World Championship by 6 points. But a lot of attention on Lewis Hamilton and what he's going to do in this race. Currently, he's down in 12th place. He made that one position when he made the start, but at the moment, he's a little stuck where he is. So there's Perez coming through in 7th place. Grosjean is in 8th place. Bit of a gap back, in fact, to the Haas of Romain Grosjean. He's about 2.6 seconds further back. And then we've got Magnussen and
Hulkenberg points all the way down to 10th place. Let's listen to Button.
Yeah, a bit of a pain having Verline in front, but can't really do much about him. I think he's starting to get dag already.
So Button just saying that Verline's struggling already ahead of him, but we did see that that incident is under investigation for Verline, so we'll have to see what's happening. Perez has been asked how the aero balance is. We think there might be some end plate damage, the team is saying to Perez, and Perez has said, yes, I think so, but it's not hurting too much. So I don't know whether we can spot that at all, any end plate damage on the Force India.
Well, it's interesting, you just see how Verline has closed that gap up to Ericsson. It's down to 14.5 seconds, the interval. That's much less than the total time, of course, to come in and do a pit stop. Jenson Button running 1.6 seconds behind them. So highlighting the benefit you get in having a clear track, a clear line of sight and fresh air to go and run your car in. And they're pretty much the only ones who are getting that clean air, other than Raikkonen himself. Bottas possibly now at 3.5 seconds behind Vettel. Then the air will have settled by the time he passes through it. But everyone else just running in this mixed match of turbulent air, and you're desperately trying to get that cooling through your radiators into your brakes, and of course you want and need it for your downforce.
Karun.
I was just having a think, now that things have settled down, just having a think about what Ferrari might do. I mean, Kimi's obviously got tremendous pace at the moment. He's broken away from Seb, well clear of the DRS zone now, 2.2 seconds. I mean, are they, is Seb going to try and push and undercut Kimi? Because as you guys talked about before, he is their man for the World Championship battle. Do you think they'd favour Seb in terms of strategy, or they're just going to let it run?
I think right now they have to let it run, because if you look with all the traffic behind Vettel, if he pitted, he's going to come out behind Grosjean, possibly Magnussen. And you can't imagine, well, Haas might play ball, as they've got quite a bit of Ferrari DNA in their car, but Perez in front is absolutely not going to play ball. So that is the big challenge, Karun, as you know. It's just, you roll the dice sometimes and hope that you know, the racing gods shine favourably on you, and maybe you get you need to really have full course safety car rather than a virtual safety car. Some of the drivers still do gain a little bit more than others in virtual safety car, but let's just remind ourselves, largely speaking, that neutralises the pack and how they're running. So you really need someone to put it in the barrier sizably, in the same way, if you remember, Piquet did in Singapore several years ago, and lo and behold, his teammate Fernando Alonso came through and won the Grand Prix.
Yeah, that's right, David. I mean, the other question is, what did they mean when they talked to Lewis Hamilton before, saying our race comes later? Well, I think what they're saying is, at some stage, they're hoping that group in front, Kvyat, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Grosjean, Perez, all pit, and Lewis stays out for another, you know, 10, 12 laps beyond them, and then hammers it in. He needs to look after the tyres, as you said, manage those temperatures in the engine as well as the brakes and the tyres. So he's got enough juice left in everything, really, from the package to attack for those 10 or 15 laps and clear that group. That's what they're hoping for, is that phase between when the you know, Sainz to Magnussen group, Sainz to Hulkenberg group pit, then Hamilton will hammer it home.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. Still got a long way to go in this race, and right now Kimi Raikkonen is doing everything required to stay out in front for Ferrari. And let's just think about this for a moment. You know, it's been a long time since Ferrari have had a victory here in Monaco, and not only that, they're running 1 and 2, looking really comfortable. It is a big shift this year, David, from what we've seen with Ferrari in recent years, where they've kind of struggled and battled to be competitive, particularly in this new era of hybrid engines that started in 2014. Before that, yes, Alonso was fighting for the World Championship on several occasions, but they didn't really show this level of performance against their rivals. Haven't shown this really since, what, maybe the early 2000s.
Well, it's a good point. I think that we have to acknowledge that Fernando Alonso came pretty close. You know, there's a few of those World Championships with Ferrari at the very last race. He was still within a shout of winning the championship, and famously Vettel won a World Championship.
How's our pace relative to Bottas, Max?
Oh, you can see that, no?
You can see, can't you? Says Max, pace is where it is.
Yeah. What I was just going to finish on, and do you remember the year Vettel won a championship in Abu Dhabi? He wasn't actually leading the championship at any point in the season until he won that race and took the title. So, look, Ferrari have done a great job in the past. This is the penalty, Verline unsafe release. So he will get a 5-second time penalty added to the end of the Grand Prix.
Well, there's one thing on that though, David. The problem there is that Button, there he is following Wehrlein, is being affected by that car ahead, but he won't get that penalty until he makes his pit stop, so it doesn't really help Button.
Well, they both pitted, of course, so technically they could both go to the end of the Grand Prix, so the only way Button can beat Wehrlein is basically to stay within 4.9 seconds of him, and he will, with the corrected time, finish in that position. But is Wehrlein holding him up at the moment? Difficult to say. 18.4 Wehrlein last time around. We've got Van Dorn is doing an 18.3 in the other McLaren. Van Dorn has been marginally quicker than Jensen. You know, let's say half a tenth. There's not been much in it at all. And then obviously put it in the barrier just on the exit of this corner here in qualifying. So the difficulty is in a normal Grand Prix track, you have to have an underlying pace 2 seconds quicker than the car in front to be able to effect what would be a straightforward overtake. Anything less than that, which is quite clearly the situation we have this year, then it becomes a case of pushing the guy in front into making a mistake and then getting some momentum on him. But more difficult to do that round here. You can really control the pace. Like Raikkonen right now, no question, he's pushing, feeling the car, but he knows he doesn't need to check his mirrors every corner because he's got track position, and that is worth so much around here. So this is a comfortable pace for him right now. Worryingly though, for Mercedes, they're running last time around 8.10 slower than Vettel, who's looking to put a bit of pressure on Raikkonen. But Mercedes, again, we've seen this with Bottas in other Grand Prix though, Ben, where he hasn't really shown the pace early in the race, but as the fuel comes off, he comes to it. The big exception here, of course, is that we don't expect degradation to play a factor here. In fact, as the fuel burns, the cars will get quicker. And, so it's just a trend we're seeing in the way that Bottas isn't quite as comfortable with a heavy car relative to when the fuel comes down.
Yeah, but he didn't show that when he took that victory in Russia, when he came from third on the grid, got past both Ferraris and then put in a tremendous display. It does seem as though that Mercedes is very much more peaky, and they have talked about this as well, that getting it to work the tyres effectively is more difficult. So if you just get slightly outside the window, you're struggling. If you get it perfectly right, you have a very rapid car, and maybe Bottas is finding that more difficult.
So Vettel, first two sectors, just bringing the lap time down relative to Raikkonen. That will be as much about him just showing the team, and Raikkonen, he's got the pace if necessary. He's got more than double the points of Raikkonen in the World Championship, and as nice as the Constructors' Championship is, the Drivers' Championship is where all the kudos is. So, this will be an interesting test of the Ferrari management this afternoon.
It will indeed. As you say, it's not a big gap.
Wilkins is losing some oil.
Okay, copy.
He's saying that a car in front is losing some oil. That's always a good tactic to say that about the car in front. It's Hulkenberg who's directly ahead of him. So if he's talking about Nico Hulkenberg, well, there is certainly smoke from the back of Nico Hulkenberg's Renault. That isn't looking good at all, is it?
No, that is difficult to know exactly what the source of that is, but it's blowing out the rear diffuser, and that is an engine failure. It's game over.
It is all over for Nico Hulkenberg. What a bitter disappointment for the German, who's actually had a really good run of results in recent races, but looks as though...
I've got the bug of my car.
Okay, Nico, we have a major gearbox problem.
Okay, gearbox then. Yeah. So in that case, difficult to know if it's gearbox, then there won't be as much oil then being laid on the racetrack, which is obviously welcome for the other drivers, but pulls and finds a safe place there at the entrance to the tunnel, the second Portier corner. Marshall have no problem recovering that.
That'll be his first non-finish of the season. In fact, he has managed to get to the end of all the races. There's Alain Prost, who has a senior role at Renault Formula One, a former 4-times winner of this Monaco Grand Prix, but that's not what he was hoping to see at all. Dropped him out of a point-scoring position there for Hulkenberg, and that would have been very valuable. So in the pits is Perez. Now, he's changing the front wing. We heard that they were worried about some end plate damage. They obviously decided it was enough of a problem. Slightly slow, just getting away, but a pretty rapid change because they changed the tyres and the whole nose section. They do practice that very, very regularly, but let's just see where he comes back out once again. He's down in 16th place behind Lance Stroll.
Yeah, gives him a bit of a gap to Ericsson behind, but there you can see the whole front wing hanger has become detached from the nose. So there's been contact with the back of... I didn't pick up then who that contact was with, but he's obviously just clipped the rear tyre of someone.
Yeah, and I think that was quite early on probably, and the damage has just got worse as they've continued. So we've lost first car from this race. It is Nico Hülkenberg, a retirement. That pushes Hamilton now is actually up into 10th place because of Perez's pit stop as well. So two things have happened on one lap. We've had somebody make a pit stop from the top 10. We've had a Hülkenberg non-finished, and that's brought Hamilton now into 10th place. So at least that's a point potentially on the board. But remember, of course, Perez has made an early pit stop, but that loss of time will certainly be painful for Force India. So opportunity there for Hamilton now. And that's a couple of places gained. He's into the points. But what will worry him, of course, is the fact that Vettel is still not far behind his teammate. They go past the stricken car of Nico Hülkenberg, yellow flags, and then greens to show they can continue racing after the incident, through the tunnel and down the hill into the chicane. It was interesting hearing Jenson Button talk after qualifying yesterday, David, about how this new generation of cars with much more grip, much more downforce, and he was saying how much more stable it is on the brakes, particularly down that hill into the chicane, pointing out we're not seeing many lockups, and nobody got really into trouble in practice or qualifying at that part of the circuit, which is often critical.
Yeah, it's been more obvious, and it's a good point, that the reduction in the lockups, we got pretty used to in the last couple of years with the narrower tires and narrower cars, seeing them really struggling with that under rotation, especially as they have the hybrid power units and they harvest energy from the rear axle, and that's used as part of the braking phase, and it becomes quite complex for them to control that. So a lot more assured around here, harvesting plenty of areas for them to brake, not the peak of brake pressure that you would see around many of the other racetracks, big stops of course down into Saint-Devote and likewise into the chicane, but otherwise there's definitely a lot of trail braking that they can replenish the energy in the battery packs, store up that 160 horsepower and then deploy it strategically in the most advantageous places, which would be a big healthy chunk as you come up out of Saint-Devote and the run up the hill. You definitely want to accelerate the mass as quickly as possible there, and then coming out of the Porte corner before going through the tunnel and down to the chicane.
Karun, now you've been monitoring Lewis's race so far. What can you tell us?
I think he's taken that advice from Pete Boniger. He's just biding his time. He's not sitting the dirty air behind Kvyat. He's sitting at sort of 1.8 seconds behind. You know, I'm going to say that's voluntarily, just to get some free air and not damage the tires and overheat the engine, because as we talked about before, his race comes later. So he's sitting in 10th place because, you know, the trouble is with people like Perez, who've pitted early, he's stuck now behind Lance Stroll. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to go with Hamilton long, so that he clears those sort of people.
Okay, well, he's certainly being patient for now. He's never had a non-finish here in Monaco. A variety of results, of course, that he's had. He's had 2 victories, funnily enough, both from third on the grid. So he hasn't won from pole position here, although he should have done a couple of years ago, only for a sort of miscalled pit stop really put him out of it and out of winning that race. But yeah, there's still opportunity for him today, and he's just got to bide his time for that. Funny enough, a new fastest first sector on this lap for Valtteri Bottas, who's suddenly beginning to pick up a little bit of pace now, but he is 6.8 seconds behind the race leader, Kimi Räikkönen. Räikkönen and Vettel maintaining their similar gap to one another at around anywhere between 1.5 and 2 seconds. There you are. There are the 2 Ferraris coming through Rascasse, past the cafes and bars down at that end of the circuit, and now out onto the start-finish area once again. And it's all looking very controlled at the moment. Let's see which of them has the faster lap. That was a 1:16.4 by Räikkönen and a 1:16.3 by Vettel. So a tiny bit faster for the man who leads the World Championship, but really very little to choose between them. So I guess it's going to be around their pit stops that life could get interesting to see whether Vettel can really apply the pressure. I don't think we're going to see any pit stops for a little while unless we have a safety car. Then, of course, that opens everything up, and then possibly we'll see people diving into the pits. But if the race just runs smoothly for now, looks like they're happy to stay out there for now. So Räikkönen is our race leader, Vettel in second, Bottas is third. We've got Verstappen in 4th place, Ricciardo in 5th, and Carlos Sainz completes the top 6. through the chicane they come. Just looking further down the outside the top 10 at the moment, we've got Stoffel van Dorn in the McLaren, Felipe Massa in the Williams, then Ocon in the Force India, Jolyon Palmer, he's in 14th place ahead of Lance Stroll in the Williams. Perez, after making that early pit stop and changing the front wing, is down in 16th place, and then the two Saubers of Ericsson and Wehrlein, and Jenson Button, he is still last. He is 1.5 seconds behind Wehrlein, can't get any closer than that, but look how close Ocon here is to the back of Massa. So it's the Williams ahead of the Force India. Two British teams that have fought hard each other over the last couple of years to be kind of best of the rest in the midfield constructors, and Force India have had a really good start to the season with points scored by both drivers in every race so far. It really has been a brilliant start to the season for them. A bit of work to do here to achieve that, because both cars are well outside the points at the moment, as we're looking at Perez and Stroll. In fact here, Stroll and Perez, not Ocon and Massa. So the two Williams and two Force Indias are looking very close to one another at this point in the race. But Force India fourth in the constructors at the moment on 53 points, and that puts them some 32 points ahead of Toro Rosso, and another 3, so 35 points ahead of Williams. And it's Williams who really have had the disappointing start to the year so far. I think they might be looking forward to Canada, which will be Lance Stroll's home race, where traditionally the Williams has been a fast car, and that is the next race on the calendar in Montreal in a couple of weeks. So Lance Stroll keeping it out of the barriers, and being chased now by one of the more experienced drivers here, who has, of course, a new set of tyres and the new front wing on the car.
Well, we haven't had any complaints on the radio from the drivers on the tyres, confirming low degradation, so it's going to be a case of being very patient. If you're running at the front, Raikkonen, under no pressure, well, as much as 1.2 seconds, having a teammate behind you is no pressure to rush and make a stop. Vettel can't really risk trying to do the undercut, because he'll come out behind Sainz. If he can get that gap, you know, maybe a couple of seconds further open, and he'll be in a nice gap there then between Sainz and Ricciardo, then it's possible that Vettel could then bolt for the pits and then force Raikkonen to have to react. But their team strategists will be across all that. Difficult to see what Bottas can do right now. Again, he'll be wanting to wait for the Red Bulls to pit, but they'll be watching it. So really, it's not just a case of looking at who's in front of you. You've got to look more than ever down the pack into what sort of traffic you're going to fall. You can accurately predict where you'll come out, assuming a car doesn't suddenly make a mistake and lose some time. But of course, what you can't predict is somebody deciding to pit just before you call your driver in.
A little bit of slow-mo here of Lance Stroll, but oh yes, that was a touch of the barrier. You wouldn't want any more than that. That was just about okay to get away with.
Don't you just love the fact, though, that they've not put a metal post right at that point?
Yeah.
You know, it just gives us those fantastic images. I think we should have more of that.
Well, we've got two men with plenty of authority when it comes to talk about Monaco. David, you've won 2 races. Mark Webber, you've won 2 races here as well. What are your thoughts on this still relatively early stage of the Grand Prix?
Yeah, that's right, Ben. It's delicately poised for me. I think that it's big shadow boxing at the moment, because the
Grip's poor. Cars all over the place.
Okay, yeah, so Lewis is still worried about his rear tyres a little bit there by the sounds of it. So, but for me, the shadow boxing that's going on at the moment, because when I watch Kimi Raikkonen's times, they are a little bit all over the place, which means he is still managing the pace quite a lot. So that's interesting. But Ferrari are going to be desperate to try and get, obviously, that pit stop window, even if they can, to Daniel Ricciardo, which is looking unlikely at the moment, which is 11 seconds behind. So the top 5 are certainly, in terms of pace, I think, managing to try and get this tyre deeper into the race to keep their strategy options open. But at any point, any one of these top 5s could get hammer time, and then it's a chain reaction. So that's what I'm really waiting to see. If it's a gap that opens up that they're going to go for, and then you'll see everyone having to push. And then the interesting thing there, Ben, is also when you have to go and push, because if they've been at 8 or 7 tenths now, when they have to push to see what tyre they've got underneath them, and that's a big moment as well. So it's still delicately poised.
Every time I push, I almost go into a wheel. So difficult to drive this car. No grip.
Okay, understood. Do your best.
And I guess it probably came soon after that moment for Ericsson that we heard the radio. He is clearly struggling out there big time at the moment. He's down in 17th place. Wehrlein behind him by 7.5 seconds, having made a pit stop. So that pit stop, he's gained a lot back from the pit stop, Wehrlein, from what he did earlier. Button is still behind Wehrlein, as you just saw Kimi Räikkönen there coming up to lap Jenson Button very soon. It's not quite what Jenson was hoping for on his one-off return to the McLaren.
It's funny how I can see the other side of the shoe now, or the shoe and the other foot, I should say, now when you've got a driver complaining, which I did plenty of in my career. How funny would it be, instead of the engineer saying do the best that you can, if the team principal come on and said, okay, no problem, bring it in and we'll put the test driver in for the next event. Yeah. I think the drivers would, as I would as well, complain a little bit less, but anyway.
Well, Kimi and Vettel are pretty close together now, separated by just 1.1 seconds as they start to lap traffic. I wonder if Vettel's going to try and use this as an opportunity. Keeping an eye on that gap around the track. You can see it's come down to 0.8, in fact, so it was 1.1 across the line, but it's down to 0.8 as they head down towards Mirabeau. Karun, what do you see?
Well, yeah, watching that battle at the moment, but further back, obviously Mark shared some really good insight on that. I'm looking at Hamilton's situation, radio.
How close do I have to get?
He's still flashing blue at the minute, Kimi. Still not solid blue for Button.
Yeah, he wants him out of the way, doesn't he?
Yeah, Kimi wants a blue flag for these guys, and rightfully so. I mean, you know, he's getting close enough to be in the dirty air. He can feel Seb coming, so I think he's right. Just looking at Hamilton, so at the moment he is 15 seconds behind Carlos Sainz, so that's still inside a pit stop, and therefore that's what they're waiting for. They're still waiting for the likes of Ricciardo upwards. They're well clear of pit stop. They'll pit now, still come out ahead of Lewis. Lewis still has a chance. If Sainz, the two Haas cars, the Kvyat pit, they'll rejoin behind Lewis. He will then have free air. The trouble for him, of course, as we just heard on the radio, he's already complaining about the tyres, in which case he's not going to be able to make use of that free air. So not looking good for Hamilton at the moment.
Okay, well, we shall see. It's great to see the Ferraris running pretty close to one another at the moment, though, separated by less than a second as they try and close up behind the McLaren of Jenson Button, who doesn't have to move out of the way until he gets that solid blue, and then the blue flag signal around the circuit, and then he will have to get out of the way of the race leader, Kimi Räikkönen. That might be coming up fairly soon because he is a little bit closer as they come through the tunnel and down towards the chicane. A lot of the track has been resurfaced this year, which has also helped in terms of stability down to that area, down into the chicane. You can see the darker asphalt where it has been resurfaced, and some of those key bumps have been removed. And certainly the drivers reporting the track feeling in great shape this weekend.
Well, you never want to be lapped, of course, and it's not an issue around what is a short Grand Prix here, but on the longer Grand Prix, you see he gets well out of the way. Button, professional, he's one race, he doesn't want to get in this mix, but that of course means he's got one less lap to do in this Grand Prix. So if there were fuel issues, which there isn't on such a short race as this, then it would allow the Honda to run a little bit more power, or actually a little bit more cooling, as sometimes is the case when you put more fuel into the car.
Yeah, they don't even need to fill the cars to the brim effectively here in Monaco because of its shorter distance. The race length in terms of time is actually one of the longer races. We're looking at a race of around 1 hour and 50 minutes, just under, if it continues without any safety car. It would be unlikely not to have a safety car at some point. It's about an 80% probability, but so far so good. It's all been clean.
So 28 laps into this Grand Prix, and you have our fifth place man, Daniel Ricciardo. He is only just over 7 seconds behind the leaders. It was 5 seconds last time around, but obviously the traffic has just put a little bit more of a buffer in there. Sainz at this stage has been able to bring the gap down to just under 20 seconds. So again, that's a sort of window that Räikkönen and Vettel have to play with. If they can try and open up that gap a bit, it gives them quite a healthy gap of about 12 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo to come into and play, and at least they know that the pace of Bottas and Verstappen and Ricciardo is close enough to theirs. It's not as quick, and coming back to what Mark Webber said earlier, no one here has fully shown their hand yet. You know, there is what he referred to, big oversteer moment for Max. Yeah, he's just carried a bit too much speed on the brakes into the last part of the chicane, but gets away with it. But otherwise, no one's really shown their hand in outright pace so far. So it's a case of they'll have a little bit more engine power available, which is marginal in real terms around this racetrack, but they'll have a lot more drive or sort of tightening the belts potential than just if you can pull half a tenth on the brakes and half a tenth better acceleration out of the corner, then you can just see how you can gain so much lap time around here when it's called for.
Well, let's see what happens here. Still, it might be a good time to stop in terms of tyre life at this point. Pirelli certainly said around this stage of the race was an optimum time to stop, but that wouldn't have counted for where you are with traffic and as you've said, dealing with the way it's going to come back in, and that's what they've got to think about at this stage.
Yeah. I was going to say, Ben, Pirelli always just gives factual information rather than, as we know, what tends to happen between when they're bringing that data together, which is an accumulation of the Friday and Saturday running. Come Sunday, assuming you haven't had rain, the track just keeps getting better. So that point at which, if they would say lap 30 is optimal, it goes out to lap 35 or lap 40 when you get to race day.
One of the things you will spot, and I think I just caught a glimpse of it just now, was you see something maybe flying off the pit board as they come through that last corner. The numbers, that where they hang out the pit boards just after the last corner is that area, but quite often with the turbulence that's going on, the numbers get ripped off the pit board and you see something flapping around. It often looks like something's fallen off a car, but generally they have to go and tidy you up afterwards.
Well, they do indeed. You know, if anyone has stood beside a platform and a train passes, you're familiar with that huge amount of turbulence that comes off. Well, Grand Prix car doesn't have the frontal area of a train, but with the wings on board, they generate a massive amount of downforce and therefore drag. So it's the same for the guy holding the pit board over the wall. He really feels the pull as the cars go, and you can see that number that you were saying just literally in the pedestrians crossing. And that shouldn't really cause any issues, assuming it doesn't get flicked up into one of the radiators.
Yeah, great points there about the pitboard guys. Well, it was interesting talking to the pitboard guys when I was racing here, and it's one of the hardest races for them to actually what we call dress the pitboard, because you've got to put obviously your position, the gap to the car in front if you aren't leading, the gap to the car behind, and laps to go. So it's a 1 minute 15 or 1 minute 17 lap as we speak now, and they're absolutely working like hell to get those pit boards dressed, because it's crucial information for the drivers. I used to hate if my board wasn't dressed every lap, because I need to know information and those gaps that are pivotal at times, because if there's been back markers and certain things are moving around. So those guys are working really hard. Sometimes they might even drop a number over the pit board, which is quite embarrassing. But that's Monte Carlo again for you.
Mark, was this a track where it's actually quite easy as a driver to take the information in from the pit board? Because, I mean, you're between the barriers doing these high speeds, or is there enough time out of that last corner to absorb what you're seeing?
Position's important, Ben. So, thankfully for Red Bull, we're sort of a bit further up the grid, if you like. So, close to Anthony Node's corner exiting. So, sort of come out and grab your eye line really quickly. But the guys on the pit board could never, ever believe that we could see the board at all. They were just like, are you sure you can see it? It's like, guys, don't worry, we are all over it, and make sure, and we'll tell you if you're not, because we know what laps they've missed.
Off the top of your head, which was the hardest circuit, or which is the hardest circuit to see the pit board because of where it comes out and the speeds? Would this be one of the toughest?
Well, actually, the new Silverstone was quite tricky as well. If you're further down towards the first corner, that's the challenge there. So if there's a high-speed corner and your pit board's very late, obviously you need to be focusing on the entry to the corner, and clearly not your, capturing your peripheral vision on the pit board itself. So then you might be a little bit more fussy in terms of when you want to look at the board. But it's fascinating, the challenge that Monaco brings out, and maybe something for us next year to show what the poor guys on the other side of that pit wall are doing right now to help these drivers try and win this race.
Well, thanks, Mark. Great to have your input. Jenson Button has been on the radio saying, oh, this is painful. He's not enjoying himself out there. He's having to get out of people's way. He's running down to the back.
Yeah, that's, the McLaren's woes have been painful for such a great team as McLaren. It's been somewhat embarrassing for Honda. And of course, Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button as two champions have been struggling with that. Stoffel Van Dorn, on the other hand, doesn't know any different in terms of Formula One. He's a winning driver from the lower formula, but he's just getting on with it, trying to make best and hope that McLaren Honda get on top of things. And meanwhile, I'm not sure Raikkonen is going quite as quickly as he needs to be going to keep things comfortable for the team. 17 flat last time around, 5th place man Ricardo.
Max. opposite Bottas. Box, opposite Bottas.
So if Bottas doesn't come in, then you box.
And he is. Verstappen is coming into the pits. Bottas has stayed out there. That's what the word was. He's going to go onto the super soft tyres. Just a fraction slow getting the right front on, but he's on his way.
So this should get him out in front of Grosjean and behind Sainz, who they're going to hope is some friendly fire. Well, you don't want him to be friendly fire at all, do you? You're just going to be a friend on the racetrack as a sister team.
And push hard now, Verstappen in the pits.
Yeah, so Bottas needs to go for it. He's got a bit of a gap between himself and Vettel. You're riding on board with Vettel here.
So if Bottas had pitted, then what Verstappen would have done, of course, is stayed out and pushed and sort of worked his way into the gap that Bottas had to Vettel, which was currently 4 seconds. So now this is when the chess game really comes into play. This is when the high-stakes poker comes into play, because you know, Red Bull have gone not quite all in, but they've certainly put a hefty amount on the table. Bottas and Mercedes have to respond to that. Raikkonen, meanwhile, 0.9 of a second in front of his teammate. He's actually putting them in a slightly uncomfortable position, because look where Sainz is. Sainz is the main player right now for this group of pit stops.
Yeah, that's key. He's 20 seconds behind the race leader, so makes it tough. In comes Valtteri Bottas. So the battle between Mercedes and Red Bull will be measured here as to how quickly he can get back out, and will he be in front of the Red Bull. Good clean stop. Never easy here in this tightly confined pit lane at Monaco. Where is Verstappen? That's the question.
Well, he's just coming out of Rascasse. He'll be coming around the last corner now.
And he's going to be out in front. Bottas is going to be out in front.
Yeah, but look for Verstappen on the brakes down into turn 1.
It's going to be close, but I think Bottas is going to emerge just in front of the Red Bull. And he's done enough. Mercedes have done enough to hold that position. You can bet that Verstappen's lap was a mighty one. He's just at the fastest final sector of anybody. But what's also interesting is now Ricciardo's clear. He's suddenly going quickly, staying out there on the same set of tyres.
So Bottas has to react to that as well.
Yeah.
And you remember Daniel Ricciardo was running just over a second behind Verstappen. So different compound of tyre now. Not quite as grippy as the one they were running on, but fresher. And we've got to get on with it now.
Are we boxing? Box this lap, can we box this lap? Box.
So he was just asking if they were boxing, and they're in. Kimi Raikkonen is in from the lead of the Monaco Grand Prix. He's led from pole position, and Vettel stays out there. So interesting this. Which way round will work? Is it better to have the first stop, or is it better to have the second stop? Normally it would be the first one, but this is Monaco, and that can be different.
Yeah, but this situation where Vettel was only a second behind Raikkonen and can unleash some lap time. Daniel Ricciardo has just gone fastest man of all in the 16.1. We have to assume that Vettel can do that time and more. So Raikkonen could be under pressure from his teammate. Has Vettel got clean air? He's got Ericsson ahead of him as I look at our circuit map coming to Poitiers.
Checo, engine temperatures are now critical. We have to do something different. If we can't attack and overtake, we're going to have to drop it back.
Man, come down. You box me because of safety. Now, who cares if he lose off?
Perez not enjoying himself. Oh, and Raikkonen's been given a bit of clear air there, because that was going to be pretty difficult for him, getting trapped by a Button, and that would have cost him hugely, but Button very good to get out of his way.
Meanwhile, Vettel, 35.6 middle sector, fastest man of all. And is he going to be following Kimi in? He's got Ericsson ahead of him. Can he afford to do another lap, or will he pit this lap?
This is certainly a chance for Vettel.
He's going again. He's doing another lap.
Right, so this could be the moment that Vettel gets the advantage over his teammate. Again, there's more traffic for Kimi Raikkonen. He's coming up behind Pascal Wehrlein. Vettel is reasonably clear. He will be closing up on Ericsson next.
Yeah, Ericsson will have the warning, I'm sure. We've got Ferrari engine in the back. Daniel Ricciardo, 4/10 quicker.
Than anybody.
Yeah, faster than Vettel. So they're going maximum attack on the engine, and this is really going to give Daniel a big opportunity to get in front of Verstappen and Bottas.
It is. There's everything going on here. This is such a crucial stage of the race now. Fastest lap by Daniel Ricciardo in the Red Bull. He's been waiting patiently, hasn't he, to see what he can do, and the tyres are holding up extremely well for him.
Yeah, Bottas isn't quick enough. 17.7 last time. Daniel Ricciardo 16.0, 1.7 eaten up right there.
Okay, Daniel, you're doing a very good job, mate. Pace is excellent. It's looking good. You're doing a good job.
Keep it up, they're saying. I wonder how long before he comes back in. There he is.
Right. Meanwhile, Vettel for the lead. Ericsson, he's just catching him, and it'd be really cool to see that if we could, Mr. Director. And the broadcast here hosted by the ACM themselves, so they're not showing us the real battle for the lead. Vettel is going again. So
yeah, stayed out there again.
Yep, and the traffic, Ericsson got out of the way. So let's see what time he's done, a 16.2. So he's consistent, Vettel. Not the quickest though. Daniel Ricciardo 16.0 again. So Daniel got the gap down to 4.7 seconds.
Ericsson gets going, and Raikkonen's trying to respond. He's just set the fastest middle sector of anybody. Who's this? This is Kimi. Did he? Oh, we're just having a look at some general slow-mo action, when really we want to see what's going on up front. Vettel is the race leader, but he is due a pit stop soon. What he's trying to do is get enough space between himself and his teammate. Ricciardo, though, is fastest man on track. Raikkonen has just done a quick lap, 1:16.1, not the fastest lap of the race, but showing that he's pushing on hard. These three guys, and for that matter, Bottas and Verstappen, they all know how critical this phase of the race is. This is where they are on the line. They might have been just at 7 or 8 tenths in the early part of the race, but they're at 10 tenths now.
Yeah, this is going to be fascinating, isn't it, to see? And we see one of the Force Indias is headed to the pits, but when will Ferrari react to Vettel? He's down at Rascasse. I don't see the guys coming out of the pit box, so he's still going again. 16.2 last time around. Comparison, as you mentioned, to Raikkonen, a 16.1. So those fresher tyres not really giving Raikkonen anything. 15.5 for Sebastian Vettel. Wow. He's hammering this home.
But look at Bottas. He's been stuck behind Sainz for a while now, David. This is costing him hugely.
It is, and that means that Daniel Ricciardo will come out in front of Bottas and Verstappen.
Yeah, Verstappen right behind. But this is for position because Sainz has not come in yet. Now he does. So Sainz comes in, frees Bottas. But his problem is that it actually is likely to be Ricciardo who will be in front of him when he makes a pit stop. Verstappen still chasing. Both these guys need to do what they can. Carlos Sainz in for Toro Rosso, onto the super soft tyres. Good clean stop. Still a potential to score some very good points here today for Toro Rosso, certainly with that car. We've seen some other pit stops being made. Kevin Magnussen has just been in, has gone back out. We saw Kvyat and made a pit stop as well. The order will all be reorganised over the next few laps, but we still wait for Vettel and Ricciardo. They're the two key ones now to make a pit stop, to see how this all works out in the end.
Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton's running around in 7.
Box, Daniel, box.
So this is going to be the lap for the Australian to come in.
There's a big opportunity for Daniel. A little bit frustrated after qualifying, felt they get put out in traffic, but he is going to, I believe, be released into some clean air here, crucially in front of Bottas and Verstappen. Does it go clean? That's a clean stop.
Much better stop than last year, when of course he lost the lead of this race as a result of a pit stop where the tyres weren't ready. So where's he going to be? Is he going to be in front of the other guys? Let's just see. He comes back out on circuit, and he's in comfortably in front of Bottas and Verstappen.
Yeah, gained a huge amount of time there through that phase. We've got Bottas and Verstappen just crossing the start-finish line now, and an 18.0 for that last lap for two of them. That's 2.8 seconds slower than Vettel, the fastest man. So,
and box, Sebastian, box.
And this is where we find out whether Vettel has done enough to stay in front of Raikkonen. It's going to be pretty close between the two of them. So Ricciardo's looked as though he's earned himself a podium finish here today with some great pace at a crucial stage. Has Vettel done enough to take the victory here today? Looks like the later pit stop is the beneficial pit stop. Maybe Ferrari have done this on purpose, I don't know, but Kimi will certainly seem to be struggling for tyres anyway. Let's see. Vettel in. He needs a good, smooth, consistent stop here. He gets going, and it was reasonable. 3.1, that's slightly quicker than Raikkonen's 3.4 seconds stationary. Where is Kimi?
He's just coming out of the last corner now, so this is a very slow out from the pit lane, and you cut along the inside of the last corner, but out in front.
Sebastian Vettel gets out in front of Kimi Raikkonen. The two Ferraris have swapped as a result of a later pit stop for Sebastian Vettel.
Did Daniel stop? Yes, Max. Daniel, unfortunately, has jumped us both.
What a disaster.
Oh, he's not very happy. Max Verstappen. It reminds me, you know,
Do you think?
it reminds me of that year that Alonso and Hamilton were going at it, and Hamilton was deeply upset afterwards that he had a different pit stop strategy to Alonso, and it started that real kind of war between them, didn't it?
Yeah, and this is where the management comes into play, because of course Max is going to say, well, why did you stop me, and I've lost track position.
Puncture, puncture, puncture. Rear left, rear left.
Oh dear, and Ocon had already made a pit stop.
Yeah, but thankfully they gave him that information as he was just coming into Rascasse, so he's made it into the pit lane without losing too much time, other than the accumulative time, of course, that it takes to come in to the pit lane, take a set of new boots, new tyres, and head to the track.
Oh, it's not looking good for Force India today. I think that run of all those point-scoring finishes may come to an end. And in fact, Perez has had 15 consecutive point-scoring finishes. It might be tough for him to get in the points today. He's down in 13.
I didn't touch anything.
Ocon quick to say he didn't touch anything. Well, he may well not have done. There's other debris out there. He's come out, in fact, in front of our new third-place man, Daniel Ricciardo. As into the pits comes Romain Grosjean. Quite a late stop for the Haas. Also into the pits has come Jenson Button for his second stop. We wondered if they would go all the way to the end, but they've decided against it. Away goes Button, and Grosjean is similarly en route as well. So we'll see where he comes out relative to his teammate, Kevin Magnussen, because they were running around quite close to one another before that stop, and Grosjean will be ahead of Magnussen still. Magnussen is actually just going into Sandoval now. You see him in the background, but Grosjean has managed to stay in front of his teammate.
One of the frustrations that I would like to air, if I may, is we saw them all doing, you know, low 15s, fastest lap of the Grand Prix, 15.2 for Sebastian Vettel. Now running around 18.6, Raikkonen 17.7, Daniel Ricciardo 16.5. This hybrid formula, they turn the wick up when it really matters, and then they turn the engine down, and they're not cruising, but they're not pushing in the way that we did in the past when we didn't have to do all that management.
But isn't that also part of the factor of racing at Monaco?
The Force India doing.
Daniel getting a little bit upset at being held up there, but yeah, I mean, Monaco, it has been a track where you kind of can pace yourself more because overtaking's so hard.
Well, absolutely, but you know, I would have loved Ben to be able to throttle back 2 seconds a lap. You know, it's not that they're driving 2 seconds slower particularly, but they're managing the engine, and they've turned the engine down, and you know, bring back engines you can push the whole way.
Let's get back to what's going on for the other World Championship contender, of course, and that is Lewis Hamilton. Karun, what's happening with his race?
Guys, the others can't really throttle back yet, because they've got to keep an eye on Hamilton. The likes of Grosjean, Magnussen, Sainz, all these guys, they have to push on because they're in a race against Hamilton. Lewis has done what I talked about at the start of the race. He's gone long. They've opted to stay out and get free air. He, on his last lap, a 16.3, whereas, as you said, David, the people up ahead of him now are in the 17th and 18th. So he's pushing hard. We're riding on board with Hamilton now. And this is a critical phase, because the likes of Sainz, Van Dorn, you know, they're all droning around in the 70s and 18s. So this strategy is coming towards Mercedes and Hamilton, as Pete Bonington told him earlier on, and as we talked about at the top of the race.
Well, let's see how well it works for Hamilton. He stays out there a bit longer. He's done all 43 laps of this race so far on this set of tyres that he began on, and we're still waiting for him to make a pit stop. He's on the ultra soft tyre. Everybody else around him, except for Stoffel Van Dorn, has switched on to the super soft. We're waiting for Van Dorn to make his first stop, but he's up into 7th place now. So similar kind of strategy being followed there by Stoffel Van Dorn. Let's see whether that can deliver some points for McLaren. Of course, we're looking for the first points of the season for that team.
Well, Lewis, when he pits, if he pits now, he'll come out in front of Grosjean.
Now, why is Magnussen back in? That is not expected. Whether he's had damage, whether there has been a puncture on his car as well. Oh, getting a little bit close to Palmer's crew, who are ready to receive the Renault. Here we go. Another pit stop there for Palmer as well. So that's slightly unexpected, but Palmer now on his way on another set of super soft tyres, and that's going to drop Magnussen back out of a potential point-scoring position by the looks of things. So up front, Sebastian Vettel is our race leader now by 5 seconds over Kimi Raikkonen. He's managed to escape, But the main attention's on Lewis Hamilton. He started in 13th. He worked his way up into 10th with a bit of benefit from other cars having troubles as well. And it's now this key stage of the race where it will determine how many points effectively he's going to get today, and not allowing for any others having incidents ahead of him. And we can see he's trying pretty hard.
Yeah, certainly going for it, but if he pitted now, he'd come out in front of Grosjean, so he's well in a point scoring position. It's going to be a bit more difficult for him with Sainz, who's only 10 seconds behind him.
That's Stoffel van Dorn making his pit stop at last. The Belgian, who has had a pretty good weekend. Just that crash at the end of Q2 when he got into Q3 for the first time in his career, and of course it did actually have an effect on who else didn't get in the top 10, including Lewis Hamilton. But he's kept it clean in this race and delivered quite well, and that's brought him back out in 10th place. So it really is potential here for McLaren to score their first points of the season with this car. I don't think it's going to be the same for Jenson Button, though. That penalty for elements of the power unit that were changed, that meant he was 15 places back on the grid, and then they decided to start from the pit lane because of changes they'd made to the car. But Jenson really has not been able to make any progress.
A little bit confusing with Raikkonen, whether, you know, he may have an issue, because he's genuinely been quick all the way through free practice, but now Vettel, you know, his tires are a bit fresher, but he's just absolutely bolted down the road, and, you know, Raikkonen running more than half a second a lap slower, which would suggest he's not in a happy place with this next set of tires.
Or
so looks quite comfortable for Vettel now.
It does look very comfortable. Or is he unhappy that the strategy has worked out against him? Is that why he's...
You think he's sulking?
I don't know, but it certainly was. The later pit stop was the advantage, wasn't it? What's sometimes called the overcut. So stay out there while your rival makes a pit stop, and then keep going on your tyres for as long as you can. And Vettel has driven that beautifully here today. Of course, we've seen Vettel generally have the edge over Raikkonen this year, and he generally had it in practice here on Thursday and on Saturday morning. It was just in qualifying where Kimi got a peach of a lap, in fact 2 good laps together to take that pole position, and they really worked on getting into clear space and then not overdriving the car, and that's what Raikkonen did. But now we've got Vettel out in front, and of course from Ferrari's World Championship point of view, this does work for them, because they're on target for a 25-point maximum with Sebastian Vettel, and we're yet to see how many points Lewis Hamilton is still going to be able to get out of this race. We'll have to wait until after his pit stop to really see how things work out, but this is beautiful for Sebastian Vettel at the moment, as long as he's got the reliability and the consistency to get all the way to the end. We've seen even the greats make mistakes when they've been out in front here at Monaco, David, so you can never count a victory at this track until the checker flag.
Right there, that piece of Armco barrier there, we saw arguably the greatest lose control of his McLaren when he was a long way ahead of his teammate. The only convenient part of that was, of course, it was very close to his apartment, so he walked back with his helmet on, and took him some time to come out again. Yeah,
Ayrton Senna, part of the legend, really, that particular weekend in 1988 after his stunning pole position. Good to see Nicholas Hamilton here supporting his brother. He's been back into racing himself again in the Renault Clio Championship in the UK. But he's supporting Lewis at the moment, who's still trying to drag what he can out of this Monaco Grand Prix after that difficult qualifying.
You could see when the dashboard was lit underneath the tunnel, radio comms.
Yeah, let's say box.
Well, they were calling him in the radio to say box. It just gets played into us slightly later.
So here we go. This is it then. Big moment for the team. Lewis just needs to keep it kind of smooth and controlled on the way in. Where is this going to bring him out, David?
I'm going to go for just in front of Grosjean, assuming this is a slick stop.
Yeah, that's tidy. That's nice. So let's see, where is Romain Grosjean? Yeah, he should be well ahead of him, shouldn't he? Sainz has just gone through, though, so he won't be ahead of Sainz. So he comes back out in 7th place there, Lewis Hamilton. Well, that's a good bonus from where he started in 13th position.
Yeah, that's good damage limitation. And then Ferrari have managed to, either through manufacturing those stops or just racing gods deciding, they've got their man most likely to battle for the championship out front as well. He's still going to take a sizable points hit here, Hamilton, relative to Vettel. Still a long way to go in the race, of course.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy for him. He'll get 8 points for for 7th position. He'll get 6 points. So, and of course, Vettel heading towards 25 points. for the race victory. So we'll just have to see how things settle down in the latter part of this race. Of course, some of those cars ahead of Hamilton might have problems, might make a mistake. It's not over yet, that's for sure. And Carlos Sainz is the car next up the road to Lewis Hamilton. And of course, in the early part of this race, Hamilton was following the other Toro Rosso of Danny Kvyat, so he's going to be quite used to seeing the rear wing assembly of a Toro Rosso in this race, I think. But well done to Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. Karun, it has kind of worked, as you said. Do you think they've maximised what they could have done here with him now in 7th place?
Yeah, that's right, Ben. I mean, in many ways, it's a damage limitation exercise, isn't it? The damage was done yesterday in qualifying, and that's why, you know, we spent all week talking about the importance of qualifying here in Monaco. But it's true, you know, they might as well hand out a chunk of points yesterday. You know, in some ways, but it's a damage limitation exercise. I think Sainz has done very, very well to stay clear of Hamilton. I think he's done brilliantly well there. Kvyat also running the points now. On the Ferrari stuff, I'm really interested to see how it pans out between, you know, what the conversation is post-race, because I think Kimi asked for that stop. I think Kimi, we heard that chat saying, you know, are we going to box or not? Which gives me the indication that there was some chat that he wanted to pit earlier. So I'd be interested to see. There's a lot of speculation that Team Honda is the championship, but I'm not so convinced.
Well, we can ask a bit about some of that kind of stuff, because team principal of Red Bull joins us, Christian Horner. And Christian, interesting to see what you did with your guys. Max got the first stop, but it's certainly Daniel Ricciardo who's gained the advantage with the later stop. So how did you decide who got what?
Well, the options available to us with Max were to try and go for the undercut, putting on the new tyres, and unfortunately, you know, we've just missed it by a couple of tenths. He lost about 3 tenths in the pit stop by the car not being completely straight. But it got very close, which, of course, Bottas in turn had to cover Max, which then opened things up for Daniel. So, yeah, it's Daniel's had a net benefit from it.
Christian, how will you deal with that after the race? Because you're going to have one happy driver, of course. Daniel's going to think, well, okay, third, I'll take that. You're going to have one slightly unhappy driver. So is that all part of the trials and tribulations of being a team principal?
As you know, DC, better than anyone, it's, you know, you're going to get winners and losers out of any strategic call. And when we made the call for Max, it was with the best interest of getting him ahead of Bottas. And as it's turned out, as I say, Bottas has covered. That's given Daniel, who's actually had great pace in free air, the ability to make that jump. And so I think with the cold facts in front of them, it's relatively straightforward to explain. But obviously, when they're out there in the heat of the moment, they're not feeling that at the moment.
Christian, obviously there's still a fair bit of this race to go. Anything can happen. Any concerns from your vantage points and your guys looking at all the data? Everything going to plan so far?
Well, obviously, it looks like, you know, Kimi's given up after he didn't manage to make the undercut again work, or the earlier stop work. So it'll be interesting to see if Daniel can close the gap to Kimi. And then, of course, still quite a long way to go in this race. Who knows if there's another safety car?
Yeah, good point. All right. Thanks for joining us, Christian, as we will see whether Daniel Ricciardo is going to be able to close up that 6-second gap between himself and Kimi Räikkönen. And, well, we can see how close Verstappen is here to the back of Valtteri Bottas, so this race is not over yet. Just a reminder, neither of these guys have scored points here in Monaco before. Looks as though they're going to be racing hard for the remainder of the race for 4th position. And the Finn, who's had 1 victory to his name, and the Dutchman, who's had 1 victory to his name as well. We're just over 12 months, of course, on from when Max Verstappen took his first win in Spain, but only a few weeks, really, from when Bottas took his first victory in Russia. Both drivers establishing themselves amongst the elite of Formula One, and here we find them racing against each other in the tight confines of Monaco.
It's a great angle there, showing you the back of the engine cover and some extra cooling vanes on the top of that Mercedes bodywork. And you can see some of the difficulties, actually, when you see the cars in slow-mo going across the curves, all the front flap and all the aerodynamic detail moving around. Of course, in the simulation world, it's very difficult to simulate that. You don't know what curve the driver's going to hit. You don't know, you know, what sort of side gust of wind. And that's where we find when they talk about correlation between wind tunnel and CFD and actually getting out on the racetrack. Sometimes you have amazing results in CFD. You put it on the racetrack, the driver hits a couple of curves and the aero just detaches and you don't get the downforce you're expecting.
They're coming up to quite a bunch of cars here, and in fact, Ocon moves out of the way quite cleanly there. Ericsson is the next one in that queue, and then Lance Stroll, and then at the top of the queue is Jolyon Palmer, who, yeah, he's running in 14th position at the moment. So Palmer did just make the one stop, actually. I thought earlier on that he'd made two, but it's showing as one on our screen. Now, good lap there from Ricciardo, and he is still closing that gap, you know, to Kimi Raikkonen. So the gap between Raikkonen and Ricciardo down to 4.5 seconds. So keep an eye on the other Red Bull. Looks very rapid, and Raikkonen is not putting together particularly quick laps at this stage, whether he's just decided to back off and look after the power unit. That Ferrari have not had the same level of reliability this year that Mercedes have had. They've had to change some more of the power unit items. It may be important to them when they get into certain positions in races that they do look after the mechanical side a bit more, perhaps.
Well, it's a good point, but you would ask the question, why is Vettel then apparently not having to, you know, he's pulled 10 seconds on Raikkonen in a fairly short order, so if he's running the same engine mode, and it would be slightly down on their ultimate mode.
Raikkonen just 4.5 seconds ahead of you now. Last lap, you were 1.5 seconds quicker than him.
Yeah, always nice to hear news like that. And Daniel Ricciardo looks very comfortably in the zone. And, well, I suppose this is a little bit of payback for Daniel Ricciardo, who should have won this race last year. He dominated the early stages, and it was purely down to a very slow pit stop that he didn't win this race. And it was a very unhappy-looking Daniel Ricciardo, even though he finished in second place. I think he'd be a lot happier today if it stays like this, especially if he gets a chance of chasing Raikkonen for second.
Yeah, it takes a lot to wipe a smile off his face, but there wasn't much of his toothy grin last year after that disappointment. We can, of course, completely relate to that. This is so much more than a race. The nervous energy and emotion that goes into surviving the Monaco weekend. But, well, he's got a lot of racing ahead of him. Still, although considerably older than his teammate Verstappen, he's still relatively young in racing terms.
So on lap 53, Sebastian Vettel is the race leader. Kimi Raikkonen is in second. Daniel Ricciardo is third. Valtteri Bottas is in fourth place, fending off Max Verstappen. And in sixth place, it's Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton is in seventh position, having made up some ground after that poor qualifying yesterday when he was 13th on the grid. Here we are looking back from Bottas at Verstappen still. The top 10 completed by Romain Grosjean in the Haas. They're looking for their first points in Monaco, and it would be a very useful finish for them if Grosjean can hang on in there. Kvyat in ninth, which is where, if he's in the points for Toro Rosso, he always seems to be. He's never finished at the top 8 for Toro Rosso.
So possible raised manhole cover, exit turn 1. There have been some punctures.
Ah, that's interesting, because we were wondering what might have caused the punctures, and a raised manhole cover, that is unusual. We've had problems like that in the past, but here in Monaco you would have expected that to be all sorted. But of course the forces these cars are generating this year are that much higher.
Yeah, and it's not just the Grand Prix cars. We've had Porsche Super Cup and various other cars running around the racetrack, so there are some drains on the left hand side of the exit of turn 1, and that caused Rubens Barrichello to have a suspension failure in the Williams as he was coming over the rise at Massenet, or just before Massenet actually, at the top of the hill. So 2010, and that was quite a sizable incident. There's no small accidents around this racetrack, but it's good that the drivers are getting the heads up on it.
Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton just putting a good lap together there, still in 7th place, but a 1:16.2 fastest, or one of the fastest laps around, although Daniel Ricciardo is still a little bit quicker up top. Just seeing Ericsson come through, chased by Ocon here. Sauber versus Force India. And this is the stage of the race where maybe the odd bit of frustration creeps in for some of these guys who are outside the points, don't really see much prospect of getting anywhere, and getting a bit fed up of absorbing the exhaust fumes of the car ahead.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant feeling at all. But also at this stage, we start to see a lot of marbles off the racing line, so the discarded rubber that comes from the wear of the tyre across the track surface, so that makes it even more difficult to overtake. Of course, if you make a commitment here, you know, you can't sort of, you can't be a wee bit pregnant. You're all full in or not at all.
Just the one retirement in this race, that of Nico Hülkenberg when he was running in the top 10. And it sounded, according to the radio, that it was a gearbox problem. Hamilton again going fast. He's down into the 1:15s now, 1:15.8. So he's pushing on for the moment as he tries to close the gap to Carlos Sainz, who is in 6th position. Top 10 completed by Stoffel van Dorn at this point, with 1.4 seconds over Sergio Perez. That's going to be quite interesting in the closing stages. Force India and Perez wanting to maintain this very good run of point-scoring finishes that he and the team have had, but he's one place outside the points at the moment, and he's got a McLaren Honda ahead of him, and they're of course looking for their first point of the season. McLaren Honda last in the constructors table at the moment, after Sauber managed to score some points last time out in Spain. So there's still a lot to play for here in the remaining part of this race. We've got 22 and a bit laps still to go, and Sebastian Vettel is looking comfortable in front. It does look like Ferrari are going to take their first victory here in Monaco for 16 years, and it looks as though it could be a 1-2 finish as well.
That's pace.
Your pace is very good, Lewis. The fastest man out there at the moment.
He's obviously been pushing on and wants to know how that has responded. We'll just see what his next lap is, actually. He's just about to cross the line. Yeah, another good lap, 1:15.8. So, again, closing that gap to Carlos Sainz. He's got it down to 3.8 seconds now, as we continue to focus on Marcus Ericsson versus Esteban Ocon. So you've got a driver here in the blue and white Sauber, who's now in his 4th year of Formula 1. Started out with the Caterham team and then switched to Sauber, up against a driver in his first full season, although he did do the latter part of last year with the Manor racing team, Esteban Ocon. And Ocon, who's been very consistent, got his best ever finish last time out in Spain when he was 5th. But he's finding that Monaco, which is a track he still is having his first ever race on, is not very easy when it comes to finding a way past an opponent. He's raced at Pau in the past, David, the Pau Formula 3 race. He was winner there, so he's used to some pretty tight street circuits, but Monaco is always something a little different again.
Well, it is a feature of a number of the drivers as they come up through. Not everyone may have raced in Monaco, but certainly if they've come up through Formula 3 and some of the other feeder formulas, they'll have raced at Pau, as you mentioned, Macau, which is very close to Hong Kong.
Track breaking up in the exit of turn 1. Track breaking up in the exit of turn 1.
So yeah, they're referring to it as track breaking up. Whether it's manhole cover or track breaking up, we're not quite sure, but it obviously that has been identified as the area that they're a little bit nervous of.
Well, that could catch someone out. I remember several years ago now in Canada, they had the tarmac break up, and it literally ended up just with 2 tracks of which you could drive within, and if you went off those tracks, you just had no grip whatsoever. Caught out a number of drivers.
Daniel Ricciardo is in 3rd place. He chases the 2 Ferraris. Vettel leads. Raikkonen in 2nd place. Ricciardo catching in 3rd. Bottas a long way back behind them in 4th place, but chased by Max Verstappen in 5th. And Carlos Sainz trying to fend off Lewis Hamilton in that 6th position. Up the hill they go. It's difficult to spot if there is...
Yeah, it looks like there might be part of the tarmac is just picking up through the apex of the corner. So hopefully we'll get a closer camera angle of that at some point.
And Ricciardo still catching the 2nd Ferrari here. Similar lap times on the last lap though, 1:16.3 for both of them. And this is, of course, he's now into the kind of area where his car starts to get affected by the airflow of the car ahead. The gap down to 1.6, it was down to 1.6 seconds, back up to 2 seconds as they go through the tunnel here. The flat-out tunnel. Very unique aspect of this Monaco circuit, and then the dip downhill and into the chicane. Ricciardo really loves this circuit, and we've seen that last year when he put it on pole position, didn't get the victory. This year he was fast throughout practice, did get beaten by teammate Verstappen, and every now and then you get that. They have a great relationship, and it really is a good working relationship, but like we heard on the radio just a little bit earlier, you always get that sense of just how important it is to beat each other. They are fighting to be #1 in that team. The team will give them equal equipment and certainly serve them as equals, but each wants to be #1.
You're such an idiot.
Understood, Verline blocked you. Yep, understood, Verline blocked you.
We can see they've done an insert of tarmac there, and that's exactly what's just breaking up slightly. That doesn't look too bad to me. I've certainly seen much worse than that. So the drivers will be well aware of it, and as long as they keep to their apex. The Sandevord is the sort of corner where you can't be too greedy on the brakes, because there literally is just one route, which is down the escape road or into the barrier. So you're a little bit more cautious on the brakes on the entry phase, and then get for an early pick up of the throttle and give yourself a great drive up the hill.
Well, what else is happening further back? Well, Hamilton has now got within 0.7 of a second of Carlos Sainz. So a rapid series of laps from Lewis Hamilton, but it's now brought him to the back of Carlos Sainz. And now the problem really begins, because we haven't actually seen a single overtaking manoeuvre in this race yet. So is there really any chance that Hamilton's going to find a way past Carlos Sainz? I don't know. What's going on here?
No, is this the contact? Certainly a lock-up and avoidance there. So that was looking for the opportunity as the traffic was coming through. And then, well, Pascal Wehrlein showing exactly what he thinks.
Well, Perez certainly wasn't too impressed, was he, as he went past? But there's Verstappen, so he's close behind Bottas, just under a second as they go over the line there between those two. In fact, 0.7 of a second, so that's one close battle. And then you've got Sainz and Hamilton as the other close battle, but somewhat further back. The gap to Sainz from these two is another 17 seconds, so it's a big old gap to those. But nonetheless, I would think that Hamilton will try and put some pressure on Carlos Sainz. Now, what do you think? Is Carlos Sainz the sort of driver who's going to fold under that pressure with, 18 laps to go?
No, I think he's quality. He's a future winner in Formula 1 if he gets the right car to drive. Yellow flag. What's going on here? Car in. Oh my goodness.
Somebody's hit the barrier on the outside of Portier, and I can't even tell you who it is, I'm afraid, because all I can see is the underneath of the
safety car out. So this will bring the pack together. Now, is that because of another car sort of flicked it up there? If you remember Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher in Adelaide many years ago. So driver should be making contact there with the marshal who's climbed up onto the barrier. Very, very unusual. So who are we missing from the running order?
Just trying to spot as they come through who may have changed in position. Oh, it's one of the Saubers, and it's Wehrlein. It's Wehrlein. So it's Pascal Wehrlein, and shake of the head there at Sauber. So it was difficult to identify there, but Pascal Wehrlein into the barrier down at Portier.
Well, whilst we wait for news on him, of course, the whole field comes together, and it's, of course, thought to Pascal that everything is okay, and they will recover him from the car. Meanwhile, the rest of the pack will bunch up.
Interestingly, Verstappen has come into the pits, so he's got maybe he was in a good window there, a good space to get some tyres on. But of course, our main concern at the moment is for Pascal Wehrlein. The drivers are doing a very sensible job of going past that car slowly, and there are going to be quite a few pit stops, perhaps, although Mercedes prepared for one, and now look as though they're going back away again.
Well, now, once everything bunches together, now, has it been coming together with Jenson Button and McLaren? That's on the run down to the chicane.
Yeah, Jenson out of the car.
Yeah, so he's effectively missed the chicane. That's a runoff area I know well from my last year in Formula 1. I ended up down there, crashed in qualifying.
So on board here with Danny Kvyat, the safety car is out. They will all have to queue up behind the safety car as the accident for Pascal Wehrlein is dealt with down there at Portier. And the marshals very quickly on the scene. The race has not been stopped. If there was some major concerns, they may well have red flagged the race.
Absolutely. We, of course, never should preempt a scenario. Let's listen from Pascal.
Pascal, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, are you okay? Yeah, it would be better if I could jump out. Okay, be patient, I will help you soon.
Better if I could jump out, he said, because he's trapped with that barrier.
Sure, well, I don't know about you, Ben, but that's the best news I've heard today, and I suspect it will be always tense moments when... So there's this Jenson Button down the inside of Pascal. They come together, and also gently leans into the Tech Pro barrier. So thankfully, that was, of course, much worse looking than it actually was. Pascal Wehrlein does everything he can to double up as a stuntman.
Sadly, it's almost a repeat of the accident he had in the Race of Champions over the winter, when which meant that he couldn't do the first two Grand Prix. And what a sad ending for Jenson Button to go out of what is presumably his last ever Formula 1 race.
Yeah. So let's see, why did he see the opportunity here? Very unusual place to try and overtake. Now, did Pascal just come on the brakes a little bit earlier? Jenson trying to squeeze it down the inside, and really not much Pascal could do about that. So, well, JB looking for the opportunity, but unfortunately I think that was on the optimistic side. Car is now down. Pascal getting out of the car. Always tense moments when you don't quite know exactly the fate of the driver, but well, McLaren team, their woes continue. Pascal Wehrlein, hopefully he hasn't aggravated that neck injury that you mentioned he sustained in January at the Race of Champions. He came in contact with Felipe Massa in a three-wheeled car and ran over.
Wehrlein okay?
Yeah, Wehrlein is okay, no problem.
Yeah, the drivers will all want to know that he is okay.
Vettel's engineer sounds a lot like my Latin teacher at school. Jeez, he doesn't sound like he's at the Monaco Grand Prix. Sounds like someone's stolen his crisps.
Very low key, isn't he? Well, we do definitely have a race on our hands now, don't we? Because they will have, that's bunched the field all up. There's great news. Pascal Wehrlein is out of his car. He looks perfectly okay. He's able to move freely, and that's good to see. And the young
a bit
German,
tentative as he got down off the barrier there.
Yeah, a little bit tentative, but let's just hope that it hasn't aggravated that injury that he suffered at the beginning of this year, because that put him out of a couple of Grand Prix. And
yeah, that's definitely aggravated one thing. He's no claims bonus.
That's right. Well, we've got a bit more pit action going on here. Felipe Massa coming into the pits for Williams, deciding to go for a new set of tyres, using the opportunity here.
Go for a set of ultras, perhaps. See the purple sidewall. Yep, going for the faster compound of tyre. He's been out of the points so far, so hoping for something.
So he'll be taken off to the medical centre. He will have to go and be checked out, even if he feels okay. But certainly looks as though he's basically fine, but will need to be checked out. Right, Karun, I need you to just having another quick look at this. I mean, give us your thoughts on this first of all, and then update us a little bit on what we can look for when this gets restarted.
Yeah, looking at JB, I mean, it's a bit of a late lunge. Pascal obviously had no expectation that Jensen was going to come down the inside there and turned in as he would have done normally, caught him completely by surprise. I mean, we have seen moves done. You know, in Hulkenberg, I think quite recently made a move down into Portier too. But as I think you have to be fully on side to make it stick. Verstappen's an interesting one, isn't he? He's got new ultras on. He's going to be. They don't flash it past me. Sorry, it's a little bit noisy here. He's got new ultras on. He's got a car, I think, between him and Bottas at the moment. What's Hamilton? I mean, Hamilton versus Sainz. This is going to help Sainz, isn't it, David and Ben? Because he's going to allow his used tyres to cool down and have another go.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Just while you mentioned about other overtakes between those two Portiers, I think Max Verstappen managed to pull one off there as well. And, well, I'm sure they'll meet. They will be debating that afterwards. But disappointing end for Jenson Button. But yes, when it comes to restart here,
I'm losing a lot of brake temp. This is really bad for the overall grip. Well, if I don't brake, I'm gonna have no temperature and I'm gonna crash as soon as we restart. So I don't have brakes and I don't have tire temp and I don't know what to do. So please help me.
Okay, well, he needs to do some accelerates and decelerations to get some heat in those brakes.
Karun, what were you thinking there?
Well, I was actually going back to tyre temperature rather as much as brakes, but you know, one thing we know with these Pirelli tyres, when they cool off, they're much harder to come back on. And we saw at the start of the race, Ben, you mentioned Ferrari were able to light up the tyres straight out the back, and I think that could be an interesting thing for them. But on the other point is the ultras will light up quicker than the super soft. So watch Max Verstappen, I think, on this restart, because he's going to have grip, as will some of the, I think the Force Indias have put ultras on. So they'll have grip that the guys on the super softs don't have.
Yeah, one of the difficulties here, of course, is, and we've seen this from Vettel in the past, he is a master of doing the restart. He'll let that safety car make its way back into the pits, and he'll just back the pack up as much as he wants to, and then bolt, I would expect, by the time he comes out of the swimming pool chicane. So that sort of, you know, releases everybody, and it becomes very difficult then, even if you've got a lot more grip, to really get yourself in a position down into turn 1, but if anyone's brave enough to do that and exploit the grip, we know Verstappen is.
Now this is Ericsson who stopped
right in the middle of the track.
Other Sauber, what's going on here? So he was passing, oh my goodness, he crashed passing the safety car. That has to be one of the most embarrassing crashes that we've seen for a long time. Monaco does produce embarrassing crashes, but that was bizarre.
Yeah, well, that track breakup we've been talking about, he's just run a little bit wider, picked up the gravel in the tyres, cold brakes. And these cars don't operate without downforce. They don't operate without the brakes being, you know, stinking hot.
Marcus, all okay?
Yeah, very good.
What happened?
I just went into the wall.
Just to quickly explain to everybody what's going on here, David, the lapped cars, you saw a classification come up which said the lapped cars are now permitted to overtake. This is standard procedure, isn't it? So if you're a lapped car, when you get that message, you are allowed to pass the safety car. So he wasn't doing anything illegal.
No, he wasn't. He was doing exactly what he should do, but he's not showing very good foresight. He's walked himself to the outside of the racetrack. If I was him, I would have walked myself to the inside of the pit lane, and then you can come back to the team. Now he's committed to being having to take the long walk around and walk over a bridge. So not showing great spatial awareness there.
Unless he's trying to avoid going back to the team because of what's just happened.
That's a good point. Yeah, you know, he's giving himself a long walk.
He might be better off finding a bar on the outside.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of those, and I'm sure he will be able to sincerely use the excuse, sorry, I don't have any money in my pockets.
That's right. Well, that was a very awkward incident for Marcus Ericsson, and sadly, we've now lost both Saubers from this race. There's Pascal Wehrlein, who crashed out with Jenson Button. He looks fine, doesn't he? Obviously, he was wearing the hands device, the head and neck protection, which hopefully served its purpose. And it was a relatively slow speed, impact and roll, but still not nice when it goes up against the barrier like that.
Well, safety car will be in this lap. We've got plenty of warning for everyone to start getting some heat. You know, Sebastian Vettel will then have control of the start of this race once the safety car makes its way into the pit lane.
So we've got some great racing to look forward to here. Vettel versus Raikkonen. You'd think that Raikkonen's main problem is going to be Ricciardo behind him, but it's Bottas versus Verstappen that's going to be really interesting. And there's Jenson. He's back in the pit lane as well. And yeah, what a sad way to go out. Both his final races have not ended very well, if you see what I mean, because we thought it was his final race at the end of last year. This one probably will be, and it's not ended well. But let's concentrate on the restart here, as Verstappen particularly will be very feisty, I think, in trying to get past Valtteri Bottas. We've got Sainz and Hamilton will be close together in the queue as well. And we'll also be watching out for Sergio Perez, who's switched onto a set of tyres in his attempts to get into the top 10 and score points and keep his point-scoring run going. So there's lots to look forward to here. We've still got 12 and a bit laps to go in this race. A sprint to the finish, with Vettel in front of Raikkonen and cold tyres.
Come on, Max, let's try and get stuck into Bottas.
I don't think he's going to need any encouragement, do you?
Yeah, look at Vettel, off he goes. I've seen him do this before, make an early bolt for it. Bottas, big lock-up, that's going to help Verstappen.
It certainly is. The Mercedes is struggling maybe a bit to get the tyres up to temperature.
Even the Ferraris look like they're struggling a little bit. But look, Max just hasn't been able to get into position there, so Bottas is actually putting the pressure on Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. We thought it was going to be the other way around.
Oh, Daniel touched the wall, did he?
He kissed the wall and then slowing down up the hill.
There goes Verstappen. Oh my goodness.
Free of rest. That was very tight, wasn't it? It looked like it was all going to go wrong there. There's yellow in the first sector. Was that for the little bit of contact between them, or I think they've got away with it so far?
Everyone really tentative as they try and get the tyres back switched on. Look at Daniel Ricciardo, and there is...
No, it's Van Dorn who's off. So we've lost both McLarens now. Both Saubers and both McLarens. Let's see what happened. He's fighting away with the Force India, and then he's offline.
Okay, stop. I'm in the wall in turn 1. Copy. Turn the car fully off. Turn the car fully off.
Oh dear, it has ended again today, early for Stoffel Van Dorn. He crashed in qualifying, and he's crashed out when McLaren had the chance of their first points of the season. But look at Verstappen here, trying to make the most of those ultra-soft tyres behind Valtteri Bottas, but Ricciardo also struggling to get up to speed.
Yeah, they're all really, you can see how temperature sensitive the Pirellis are, but just a thought to McLaren, they've got one more chance this afternoon, of course, or early evening, when Fernando Alonso tackles the Indianapolis 500. But certainly disappointing Monaco for them. And well, Daniel Ricciardo not able to capitalise on that restart. He's the man, he was the hunter before on Raikkonen, he's now the hunted now.
He's so nearly threw it away here. Again, he's a little bit deep as the McLaren is hoisted away above them, and the yellow flags down there mean no overtaking clearly in that area.
Yeah, look at the lap time for first lap there, 1:22 as the release from behind the safety car. Considerably slower.
Yeah, that's a really slow lap because they were up to speed by the time they crossed the line, so yeah, that is pretty slow.
Look at Daniel wide again at Mirabel. He is really struggling. Look at the front steering on that. Tyres completely out of their temperature window.
And Verstappen's on fresh tyres now. When you've got a situation like this, David, where the tyres are cool, it's worse being on worn tyres, isn't it? Because they don't come up to temperature as well as those tyres with more depth.
Absolutely, you lose thickness of tyres, so you lose compound, you lose movement in the compound, which is what generates the heat. So you have, you know, very shallow tread depth, and the tyre just doesn't move around, and yeah, it is really, really uncomfortable.
So these guys are right on the limit on tyres that are not giving them grip. Now suddenly Ricciardo seems to be finding a little bit more grip, and you're on board with Verstappen as he chases on these fresh tyres.
You can push like an animal.
Magnussen being told he can push like an animal. He came onto tyres as well, I think, so he's chasing after Massa, but he also pitted.
Look again, Ben, at the lap time, 1:22 for Vettel. Just remind ourselves, the fastest lap of the Grand Prix from Vettel, a 1:15. So running 7 seconds slower.
This was a replay of that restart. The little lock-up from Bottas.
Yeah, you can see everyone having lock-ups there, and you can expect the drivers to be having a long conversation. Did he touch the wall? Yes, he did, but did it in such a beautiful way. If you can do wheel to Armco, you get away with it. So was as lucky as he's going to be this afternoon. But you know, this is one of the difficulties. You've got a nice safety car, looks amazing, beautiful flashing lights, but it's a road car, and even though it's high performance, it just doesn't generate any downforce. And actually in the wet it performs, relatively speaking, quite well, because it's, you know, 2-ton car and it picks up a lot of grip. In the dry, it just cannot drive quickly enough to allow the cars to be in what would be considered a safe operating window. So cue a long driver's briefing with Charlie Whiting at the next Grand Prix, where they'll be saying, you know, you put us into very, very difficult situation for the restart, as being borne out by the lap times they're doing right now.
Of course, another step of that is the fact that Pirelli have gone very conservative on the tyres this year, because they didn't quite know what to expect with these 2017 cars. So this ultra-soft tyre is not actually nearly as soft as we've seen from some of the softer tyres from Pirelli in the past.
No, they can put any colour on the side and call them anything they want. You know, the ultra-soft, in actual fact, could be the hardest compound that's known to man. So, you know, slightly misleading year to year. The fact that, you know, we've not seen the tyres being marginal here at all completely confirms that the compound range of which they could actually bring here next year could be considerably softer.
Well, no real changes down the order at the moment. Hamilton, by the way, still in that 7th place, hasn't been able to find a way past Carlos Sainz, but we have now got Perez in the top 10 because of Van Dorn's accident, so that has brought the Force India into the points. It's Vettel leading from Kimi Raikkonen, looking at a Ferrari 1-2. Ricciardo just about surviving in 3rd, and we've heard from Red Bull that they have not picked up that there's any damage on Ricciardo's car, despite the fact that he touched the wall. The data is showing them that there's no damage.
Well, that's good news. And again, if you are going to touch, you really want to do it with the side of the car, both wheels together. And the suspension tends to be able to take that. It's those tiny little glances, as we've seen at the last part of the swimming pool, where they just break the steering arm or the top wishbone.
Across the line again to complete lap 70 out of 78. We are now into the closing stages of the Monaco Grand Prix, and things certainly were brought alive by that late safety car, but no changes so far.
And if you're comfortable, strat 6.
Does it look comfortable?
Does it look comfortable, says Bottas? No, it doesn't. It looks like hard work for all of them at the moment. And although the lap times are now just beginning to come back down to the sort of territory we saw before the safety car, clearly it was like driving on ice for those first couple of laps. And in a way, it's amazing that it was only Ricciardo that actually hit the barrier. I'm surprised there weren't more mistakes.
And of course, that's the first time they've been in that situation. You don't practice that through free practice, so they're really living on their wits, on their skills, and pretty much well, in professional terms, making it up as they go along.
Well, of course, Van Dorn did pay the penalty, didn't he? But he did have a car down the inside of him at the same time, so that was extra difficult. Riding on board then, here we are with Valtteri Bottas saying, does it look easy? It is not easy for him, but he is in a fairly secure 4th place. Looks like we're not going to get a Mercedes driver on the podium, and that does not happen very often, David, in the last 3 or 4 years. That is quite something, but neither Hamilton nor Bottas is going to end up on the podium here. Just looking slightly further down the order at Perez and Massa. I think somebody may have damaged the front wing.
Yeah, bits of debris. They look like the packing foam that goes inside, and there you go as the
Yellow 7 drive position 9. Yellow 7 drive position 9 and green cal 1.
Guys, you really want me to crash, huh? Stop around. I mean, just leave me in one position. You need to drive it. I need to 100% focus.
So he didn't want to be talked to, but I don't know whether that was while he was challenging Kvyat there, but there was contact between Perez and Kvyat. I wonder whether Perez has got damage that's going to allow him to finish, and that's such a shame for Danny Kvyat, who's driven solidly all weekend here and deserved some points out of it.
Well, there's no question about that. That was a optimistic lunge from Perez. Fortune favours the brave, but I don't think you can say that the Toro Rosso of Daniel Kvyat was anything to blame in that. He was rightfully on his line. You can't just force yourself in and expect the other car to evaporate.
Well, that's another late retirement in this race. So after losing just one car in the early stages of Hulkenberg, we've now lost Jenson Button, Pascal Wehrlein. We've lost Marcus Ericsson, Stoffel Van Dorn, and now Danny Kvyat. And Perez has made a pit stop. Let's have another look at this, David. He's come from quite a long way back.
Yeah, he saw an opportunity, but that door is always going to close. It's the only line through the exit of Raskas. So he's basically at this point put a situation where if Daniel doesn't move, then they're going to crash. And, well, in this case, they crashed.
And I think that's the end of the chance for points for Perez. So with that, he will have ended his sequence of points finishes. It seems disappointing that he went for such a risky manoeuvre at that point, which has now put him out of the points entirely.
In such a consistent season of scoring for Force India.
Very strange.
Still Ocon outside of the points, but puts Palmer also close to being able to score a point. He's only 2 seconds after that safety car behind Magnussen. Who, assuming he doesn't make a mistake, I think it's going to be difficult for Jolyon, but let's wait and see. As we've got Stroll, the car being retired.
Well, not again. He's had, 3 retirements already this year, and it looks like it's going to be another one for the Canadian. And he's had a lot of mechanical problems, had that shunt in Bahrain, which was not his fault at all. So it does not seem to be having much luck. Still, the battle for 4th is one to watch, though, between Bottas and Verstappen. There's no doubt that Verstappen on those tyres has got the advantage in terms of grip, and it's Bottas hanging on gamely here, really trying to do it. It sort of makes you think back to that famous 1992 race, but that was for the lead, of course, when Senna and Mansell were so close together, and Mansell had the faster car in the closing stages.
Yeah, his car was considerably quicker, which is why he was basically trying to find a gap anywhere, and Ayrton was supreme at making his car just wide enough in the right places, and was able to go through and take that victory. I think it was his 5th victory around the streets of Monte Carlo.
Yeah, and went on to win 6 in his career, so is very much the king of Monaco. Ayrton Senna with those 6 victories here. Graham Hill, the late Graham Hill, took 5 wins. Funny how this track certainly favoured many great drivers, but 1 or 2 it never did. Jim Clark, for example, never won here, but was on pole and led several times. But in those days, the cars were somewhat less reliable.
And Nigel Mansell?
That's right. Yeah, he missed out, didn't he? That was his closest to winning it, was that year. 4 laps to go then, and it's Sebastian Vettel who's still looking towards taking the maximum score of points here. 25 points for Sebastian Vettel. And we're riding on board, though, with Max Verstappen, who's doing everything he can to keep the pressure on Valtteri Bottas. This is tough for Bottas. You might not see the car leaping around and moving around much, but he is on the limit here, trying to keep ahead of Verstappen, but not make any mistakes, because it's really a mistake that will give Verstappen the chance to go through. And as long as he doesn't make any, they're all concentrating quite close together, though, aren't they? Because there's Raikkonen, there's Ricciardo. They're still all pretty tight here.
They managed to get the lap times back to where they were. It took them a few laps, but Vettel's down at a 16.6 now, quite comfortably out front with a 3.8 second gap. Raikkonen, well, with only 1.4 to Ricciardo, can't afford to make a mistake, but a very experienced driver, so unlikely to do so. And as you say, Bottas a second back, Verstappen 0.3, Sainz a bit more breathing room to the back of Verstappen of 4 seconds, but Lewis Hamilton is 0.8 of a second behind him, so he's got his mother's full of a silver arrow. But Hamilton can't afford to risk all and try for those couple of points that would be gained from getting in front of Sainz. You know, he's done a great job to get himself into the points, so I think this is just one of those weekends where he has to bank that now.
13 cars remain with 3 laps to go, and Ferrari are all set for a 1-2 finish. Ricciardo on target for a superb podium finish here as well, to add to his tally, having been on the podium here last year as well. But look at Lewis Hamilton. He's the one to keep an eye on right now, because he's still chasing down a potential 6th place. And who knows, a couple more points could be so crucial at the end of the season. He's on target for scoring 6 points, but if he can get past that Toro Rosso, he adds another couple of points to that score. And although this has been a disappointing weekend as a result of what happened in qualifying, he definitely wants to dig out what he can. On the other hand, David, he cannot afford to do what we've seen several people do, and that's take a risk and then throw anything away.
Yeah, he's smart enough to know that, so he's just applying pressure to Sainz where he can. What Sainz can't possibly know at this stage of the race, though, is just how mad Lewis might be in terms of going for a lunge. But I've got to believe that, having spoken to him last night, and he got over the disappointment of qualifying, then he was very much in a case of, look, this is a recovery Grand Prix, let's just try and get the best out of it. I know that sits slightly in contrast to his normal attacking style, but sometimes you just got to bank it.
Well, that's right. Well, let's see what happens here. And in these closing stages, that track break-up down at the first corner doesn't seem to have had too much of an effect, thankfully. So that hasn't meant that anybody's had any particular problems down there. But Vettel, you can see, with that comfortable advantage over Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Bottas and Verstappen, this other group all close together. And again, it's so encouraging to see that we've got the 3 kind of top constructors all racing one another pretty hard in this race. If Lewis Hamilton had been a part of that as well, it would have been very, very interesting. But that qualifying performance certainly meant that he was never going to be a part of this little group right now. Fastest lap from Sergio Perez, who changed tyres a little while ago after the incident with Danny Kvyat. But I don't think that he's going to be able to get any points out of this, because Perez is down in 13th place. He's behind his teammate Ocon, who's in 12th position, and it's very difficult for him to get anything out of it.
The battle's not over, guys. Just take these points.
So Hamilton's not giving up, whether that's on just this race or whether it's on for the season. I think he's probably talking about the season ahead. There's a long way to go, and I totally agree with that, because all sorts of things can happen. It's gone against Lewis Hamilton here today, but there is absolutely no reason why on some weekends we'll see Ferrari have a bad weekend. New lap record for Sergio Perez. Has he beaten Michael Schumacher's? He's not under the 14.4, but they may not count that, because the track has changed very slightly over the years, so as an official lap record that may well get to stick, although it's not the fastest ever lap we've seen on the same basic layout, but curbs and things have changed over the years. So Sebastian Vettel then on his last lap. This is a dream come true for Vettel, an opportunity to open up that gap in the Drivers' World Championship. You know, he's only ever won this race once in the past. That was back in 2011 when he had pole position. It's only the second ever time that he started from the front row of the grid. But he has done it right today. He ran second in the early stages, came through after the pit stops to go ahead of his teammate. Sebastian Vettel wins the Grand Prix of Monaco, his 3rd win of 2017. Second place goes to Kimi Raikkonen. It's a 1-2 for Ferrari. Ricciardo, a brilliant 3rd. superbly driven in that middle stint around the pit stops. Bottas 4th, Verstappen 5th, Sainz 6th. Hamilton salvages 7th after starting in 13th place. Grosjean's 8th, Massa in the points in 9th, and Magnussen with the final point in 10th place. Both Haas cars getting in the points. That's a major achievement for the team, and that's the first time, in fact, that they've ever done that. But look at the delight for Sebastian Vettel.
Yes! P1, you deserve this one. You deserve this one, Master Vettel in Monaco.
Yes, 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 yes. Grazie ragazzi, grande lavoro. La macchina è stato molto buono. The 2 laps with the old tires, I was giving everything I had. Grazie. Grande piacere oggi.
Bravo Seb, spinto al massimo, così si fa, avanti.
And here's a strange statistic for you. It's only the 2nd victory from qualifying 2nd on the grid in 14 years here in Monaco. For some reason, 2nd on the grid has not often led to victory, but it has on this occasion for Sebastian Vettel, taking the win. A 1-2 for Ferrari, a dream result for the team. First ever 1-2 for Ferrari. It was remarkably late, actually. It was 1999 with Michael Schumacher and Eddie Irvine. The first 1-2 here in Monaco, that is, of course. And suitably enough, in many ways, it comes 50 years after Ferrari driver Lorenzo Bandini lost his life here at Monaco. So a team with so much history. Of course, the car itself is named the SF70H in celebration of the fact that we're 70 years after the first year that a Ferrari was produced back in 1947. Of course, Enzo Ferrari had been running racing cars from before that time, preparing the Alfa Romeos that raced pre-war. But it is a significant year for Ferrari, and right now, David, they are delivering, and Vettel with that has built himself a very, very useful lead in the championship.
Yep, great result. They've worked well with the regulation change. They've unleashed some power and potential from that Ferrari engine, and they've shown the consistency. And how close, you know, Barcelona a couple of weeks ago, Hamilton just got the win on Vettel. Hamilton out of play on this weekend, but Vettel has managed to, you know, find the advantage over his teammate Raikkonen, who, well, he had his moment in the sun yesterday, taking pole position, but he just didn't seem to have the pace today, which should be a great surprise based on the other Grand Prix we've seen. But Daniel Ricciardo there in the background salvaged something out of the frustration. And I think that's his 3rd podium here in the last 4 years, so he's Mr. Consistent without actually getting a victory. But the man of the moment, there you go,
Sebastian Vettel. And a note to Kimi Raikkonen, of course, led the early part of this race. We wondered if he was going to take victory. First podium for him here since he won here, in fact, in 2005. So it's been a long time since Kimi Raikkonen's been on the podium. But it's Sebastian Vettel who is celebrating. It is the big win, the Monaco victory, for only the 2nd time in his career, and fully deserved as well. Ferrari have taken the 1-2. Sebastian Vettel has opened a 25-point championship lead.
Numéro 3 et puis le duettiste de la 4e place pour Valtteri Bottas avec 6 dixièmes d'écart. Je pense simplement que le Ferrari était légèrement supérieur. Légèrement. La vérité, c'était supérieur. À la ligne. Like Wally. Grande Pisello. All out. Monaco. Bravo à tous. En tout cas, Vettel qui l'emporte devant Raikkonen et Verstappen. Bottas quatrième, Verstappen cinquième, ainsi des places pour Carlos Sainz avec la voiture de 2005. C'est des places pour Carlos Sainz avec la voiture de ça rapproche bien. Va prendre les subtiles. Termine 13e. On a eu l'occasion d'apprécier la chose. Alors, on attend maintenant la cérémonie protocolaire ici pour l'apparition des pilotes.
You tell me. Like 19, I say no. Just turned and had nothing. I was really fine. I was shitting myself.
Ferrari are celebrating their first 1-2 finish since the German Grand Prix of 2010. But Kimi Raikkonen looking the happiest after having pole position and leading the early part of the race. He's still come home with a very, very solid result. But it's Sebastian Vettel who can celebrate victory here on this occasion. And for Red Bull as well, they stole that third place away from Mercedes, and we see no Mercedes drivers about to get on the podium. Bottas finished in 4th place, Verstappen was 5th, Sainz an excellent 6th. Hamilton ended up in 7th place, Grosjean 8th, Massa 9th and Magnussen 10th. But there he is, the race winner, Sebastian Vettel, out to celebrate with this 1-2 finish for Ferrari. And you think back 7 years to their last 1-2 finish, Alonso and Massa in Hockenheim. But a great 3rd place as well for Daniel Ricciardo. So, the trophy to be handed over by His Serene Highness, Prince Albert. A very keen follower of Formula One, of course. And for Sebastian Vettel, that special, special trophy. David, he's matched you at last with 2 victories around this circuit.
Yeah, I always knew he had it in him. Yeah, he's done plenty of winning, and well, Kimi, look at the disappointment in his face. He's been up there about 80, 85, 86 times on the podium, but obviously disappointed. But he will get to be presented by the trophy by Prince Albert's better half, Princess Charlene. I've probably just been struck off the Monaco guest list.
Well, it is a great day for Ferrari, even if Kimi's not feeling particularly happy at this point. And the trophy for 3rd to be handed over to a much happier looking Daniel Ricciardo than when he was on the ground floor podium last year. And that's another special, special trophy to add to the cabinet. And congratulations from Christian Horner and Helmut Marko as well. So Michael Schumacher was the last winner for Ferrari here in Monaco back in 2001, and it's another German champion, Sebastian Vettel, who at last has broken the drought for Ferrari here 16 years later to take a win for the team. The Italian border only a few miles away. It's a special day. Celebration from the Ferrari mechanics, the whole Ferrari team there. A very special day for them. And Daniel Ricciardo just acknowledging that third place as well. Some scintillating laps in the middle part of that race around the pit stops were what led him to be able to come home in third place, beating both Bottas and his teammate. Sebastian Vettel, a four-times world champion, has now taken his second career win here in Monaco and a vital gain in points in his chase of a fifth world title. So really good stuff from Sebastian Vettel today. The drivers are going to stick around for the obligatory photographs. I guess they're being a little more careful not to spray too much champagne behind them. Kimi still not looking very happy though, as you can much imagine, but he does click the champagne with his teammate and wonders where that one got away from him. Well, it was around the pit stops. Was it at the right time to come in for him? I wonder. There'll be quite a debrief afterwards, obviously, as he hoped that this would be his opportunity to take his first win since 2013. But the interviews are about to be taking place, and it's going to be the reigning world champion who will do the interviews for the aspiring world champions here today. Well, there's Lewis Hamilton. He won't get interviewed up there, obviously. He's not made it to the podium this time, but it's going to be Nico Rosberg, interestingly enough, who's going to be doing the interviews in a moment or two. Of course, Monaco is home for Nico Rosberg. We've seen him have a lot of success, 3 wins here in the past. But this that sequence of 4 consecutive wins by Mercedes here in the last few years has now been broken, and very comprehensively broken by Ferrari. So we'll just wait for the drivers to head over to do those interviews.
Voilà, on embarque les trophées, on embarque les bouteilles naturellement, et on va descendre maintenant au pied de ce podium pour la fin de finale séance d'interview.
All of them looking pretty relaxed. Just a quick confirmation, by the way, on that result, that it was 13 cars that finished the race, so we lost quite a few in the end. We lost Kvyat, Stroll, Van Dorn, Ericsson, Button and Wehrlein, of course, in that instant that they suffered together, and Nico Hülkenberg early on. Also confirmed that Force India's run of consecutive points did end here, and Perez' run of consecutive points that was up to 15, that also ended, but he did at least get the finish, and he's had a very long run of race finishes, Sergio Perez, so despite the little bit of damage that he had with Kvyat, he was able to complete the race. And just another quick mention that both Haas drivers were in the points. Great effort that for Grosjean and Magnussen. Let's go down and hear those interviews.
Weekend again, this has been proper amazing racing, and great to see it also from this perspective. Unbelievable atmosphere here in Monaco, very, very special. So it's great to be back for the first time again this year. Daniel, waiting on Sebastian and Kimi.
How are you, man? All good? It's been a while.
Yep. Congrats.
Thank you.
So, Sebastian, great weekend, huh? First Ferrari win in 16 years. How does it feel?
Oh, unbelievable. I think it was a very, very intense race. I was hoping at the start to have a bit of a better launch, but Kimi had a good start. I had nowhere to go, so I had to be patient. Then there was a phase in the first stint that was really tricky. The tires started to slide. I think you remember how it feels. It was quite uncomfortable. I think Valtteri and the pack was catching up a bit. We were facing some traffic. But then I had a second set of tires. I had a couple of laps where the car was really, really good. I pushed everything I had because I knew if there is a chance to win, then that's it. So I was able to use that window and came out ahead. So at that point, obviously, I could control the race. after the restart, it was really tricky with the cold tires. I think every one of us was really struggling. Daniel said he brushed the wall in turn 1, first lap, so it was really, really difficult. But after a couple laps, I was able again to control the gap to behind. So fantastic job. The team has done really well. So great thanks to them, and a fantastic weekend for Ferrari.
And was that planned that when Kimi comes in, you stay out a bit longer to
No,
give
not
it a
really.
go?
I don't think there was, we couldn't plan much. Obviously, the plan was to try and pull away, which we did. Then Valtteri had really good pace. I think we were struggling both a little bit with our rears. And at that point, the window opened. So as soon as Valtteri obviously pitted, I think Kimi responded. For me, I think I still had a bit of a gap, nothing to lose in P2, so I tried to push as hard as possible. And within 2 laps, I was surprised myself to be able to pull a gap to come out in front.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Kimi, I think it's fair to say the whole F1 community would have been very, very happy as well to see you get that win today. What are your thoughts? So you lost it during the pit stops, of course, and what are your thoughts on that?
Hard to say, really. I mean, obviously, it's still second place, but it doesn't feel awful good. But this is how it goes sometimes, and we go for the next race and try to do better. But yeah, it's one of those days that you wish you get a bit more.
I know how it feels. It's not a good feeling. But great team results anyways. Okay. Daniel, great recovery, I guess, after a problem in qualifying. You're pleased with that?
I'm happier today for sure. It's just yesterday, I felt like we had so much more to offer, and it was just a shame not to be able to really show our potential around here. So I got my chance today when Max and Bottas pitted. I had the track to myself for a few laps and just managed to get good times in those tires. Did some consistent laps and got in the overcut, so I was happy with that.
Turn 1 after the safety car looked like a bit of a hit. Was it scary in the car?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. I wasn't sure if I damaged anything, and then I saw Bottas, trying to get inside me. So yeah, these tires, man, when you get a safety car, they're like driving on ice, So it was hard. That was not a fun moment, but happy to hold it.
Sebastian, back to you. Ferrari's car is looking good at the moment. You think you're going to be able to keep it up for Canada?
Well, we hope so. Canada is a completely different track, but to be honest, for now, I'm just going to enjoy the win here. You know yourself, it's very, very special to win here. So, yeah, I think we'll have a fun night, and then we have enough time to prepare for Canada.
Where's the party?
I don't know. You tell me. You won more times than me here, so you need to guide me.
We can have a chat afterwards.
All right.
All right, so thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you had a great time, and tune in again 2 weeks' time, Canada. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ferrari have conquered Monaco. They lead the Drivers' and Constructors' World Championships, and the battle with Mercedes continues.